Chapter 381-Demon Blade Evolution. Follow my orders and never approach that area. Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel shouted with a heavy pressure that could not be concealed in his eyes. He looked at the area of the demon sword, and he felt panic in his heart. This is the first time he has heard of a knife that can suck blood. Moreover, it is still automatically sucking blood, completely taking the blood within a radius of 100 meters, and actively pulling the blood flow trajectory, so as to completely integrate the blood into the blade. This picture is so terrifying. Lieutenant General, what exactly is that? A Navy's lips trembled and asked hastily. Seeing the corpse of his colleague, the blood flowing on the ice, but being pulled by an inexplicable force, the picture in the blade is really unbelievable. Moreover, the bright red blood is almost so rich that everyone can find it. Under the original white translucent ice cubes, there was deep clear seawater, but now, it has become a sea of pus and blood. Except for red, it is still red. Such a change made the group of navies present involuntarily fear in their hearts. The demon sword. The real demon sword. Flying Squirrel gritted his teeth and said with a depressed face. He couldn't think of any other explanation besides this one. 707 This is a real demon knife that can suck human blood. It is not simply used to kill people, but it can also draw the flow of blood independently. This kind of strange ability, even if the Flying Squirrel has been in the Navy for decades, is the first time I have seen it. Such a horrible thing has never happened before. Only what he saw today was what frightened him the most. This knife. Heejong narrowed his eyes slightly and whispered, "It seems that I have seen it in the hands of the 5 old stars. Is it the first generation of ghosts? But why did it appear in the hands of this monster? Could it be?" Lieutenant General Crane's eyes popped, and an idea came to his mind. Unless Liang has taken away the first generation of the 5 old stars, Goosh. Otherwise, it will be difficult to find the same blade in this world. In particular, it is a supremely sharp knife with a special appearance and a rare material. There are only 12 in the whole world. Each one represents a top-notch weapon. But each weapon has a different shape, and among them, the first-generation Gito is one of the most notable, a terrifying demon sword that can affect people's minds. But Lieutenant General Crane heard about the ability to suck human blood for the first time. Not only the Navy had a commotion, but there were also countless pirates asking the captains on the pirate side. "Captain Joes, this knife is too scary." A pirate was panic-stricken and lost his voice. "Let's not get close to the rest of the area. As for the rest, there's nothing we can do." Jaz's whole body was covered with a layer of diamonds. Looking at the bright red color, his heart was under great pressure. The demon sword is terrifying, but the most terrifying thing is the holder of this demon sword. If the holder of the demon sword was not that person, naturally, there would not be so many people panicking about it. First generation Onito. Hawkeye's eyes narrowed and he said in a low voice. He held the black sword knight in both hands, and then looked at the changes of the first generation of ghosts. Suddenly, he had a feeling in his heart. It seemed that the first generation of ghosts in front of him was already beyond the scope of the Supreme Sword. Sucking blood is naturally purposeful. Chapter 381-Demon Blade Evolution. NLT, 31 and GT. Sucking blood is naturally purposeful. Is it just for beauty? This guess is not realistic. Therefore, Hawkeye can infer that this knife is achieving self-evolution. That's right. Apart from this inference, he can no longer get along with other reasonable explanations. The knife that can self-evolve makes Hawkeye feel heartbroken. The name of the demon sword is not worthy of its name. It is understandable that the blade that evolves by sucking blood is dubbed the title of the demon sword. But for a big swordsman like Hawkeye, this is not a cruel thing. Liang did not kill millions of people at all to sacrifice the evolution of this knife, which is already quite kind. BJCF people who died in this war to achieve the evolutionary steps of the demon sword, and there is nothing to be scary about. In Hawkeye's eyes, if it was him, maybe it would be even crazier. The blade of self-evolution is really exciting. The corners of Hawkeye's mouth moved slightly, and he whispered to himself. This demon knife clearly surpassed the ranks of the Supreme Sword. Because, in the Supreme Sword, there is no such terrible blade with self-awareness and self-evolution, only what he sees in front of him. This is the only one. I have long heard that the first generation Gush was suppressed in the ranks of the Supreme Swordsman because he was too evil. Otherwise, his ranking would have already surpassed the Supreme Swordsman. There are only 11 Supreme Knives. Among them, the first generation of Ghosts is not included. It can be considered that it exists independently. There is no weapon in this world that can equal it. Hawkeye opened his mouth slowly, his eyes brightened, said. This is what he thinks in his mind. When he sees the first generation Ghost in front of him, he can firmly believe that the guess in his heart is correct. Location on the shore. Li Ang's eyes narrowed slightly, watching a group of Navy and pirates change the battlefield. He couldn't help but wave his hand with a helpless smile. Everyone has run away, but fortunately, there are still a bunch of corpses. In a short period of time, the first generation Gito can't be completely consumed. Exactly, you can also see how much change the first generation Gito will bring after swallowing the blood of those corpses. Don't let me down. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, his tone inexplicable, with a strong sense of anticipation. Around the white ice cubes in front, blood flowed from it, and it sank into the blade of the first generation Gito. Buzz. The first generation Gush produced waves of aura fluctuations, and the blade was shaking. Obviously, it was excited, like a demon, opened its fangs, waiting for countless flesh and blood to be swallowed in its belly. A terrifying murderous aura spread to the surroundings with the first generation Onishi as the center. The area within 10 meters was enveloped by this terrifying murderous aura. Among them, only Li Ang was alive. Feeling the murderous aura of the first generation Gush, Li Ang's smile became even brighter. That's it, evolve, the stronger the evolution, the better. The self-evolution of the first generation of Ghosts is very convenient. The whole process does not require Li Ang to participate, just wait quietly. The first generation of Ghosts can realize that he controls the blood to flow to himself, and then realizes the act of sucking blood. At this moment, Li Ang could clearly see that on the sharp blade of the first generation Gush, the originally smooth and bright blade had gradually turned into a somewhat dark red. He sucked blood and changed its color. It's just that I don't know how huge the change in power is after sucking blood. NLT, 32 and GT. Chapter 382-100 meters of barrenness. Within a radius of 100 meters, there was a terrifying scene. The corpse has dried up. That's right. All corpses are gradually becoming withered, and the original elastic skin, it stands to reason, even after death, it is impossible to wither so quickly. But at this time, their skin gradually withered. There is an inexplicable force that affects them, causing them to drain the blood that was left in their bodies. Everyone's face quickly turned pale, and the corpse was also cold and lifeless. It was already dead, but it became even more terrifying. Hey, is it true? Kizaru's eyes flashed, looking at the pile of corpses that were gradually withering, with a heavy tone. Not only does it control the flow of blood, but can it also actively let the blood flow out of the human body? Thinking of this, his face became even more depressed. In this way, the ability of this demon knife is more terrifying than he imagined. At the same time, the expressions of Akainu and Aokiji also became cold and gloomy, but they did not say a word. This monster knife. Beyond their imagination. The corpse, withered. Gao stepped on, Sengoku's face was heavy, and he slowly whispered. Right now, he really can't focus on the pirate on the opposite side. He had prepared for the worst, that is, Li Ang suddenly started. But he did not expect that Li Ang did not do anything, but instead, he appeared on the battlefield and left the demon sword behind. Never mind. Sengoku gritted his teeth and firmly set his sights on other areas of the battlefield. In any case, this war can only be won and not lost. Liang didn't do anything, it was already the greatest luck. The distant battlefield is also in full swing. Kill. The pirates held a large knife and slashed wildly at the navy. The navy was directly dismantled into 8 pieces. In real war, it is far more brutal than imagined. Dead people are more commonplace, nothing more than normal things. Very few people were seriously injured, very few, and they were just killed and fell to the ground with no life. This is the real battlefield, not the beautiful picture in people's images. Boom, boom, boom. The bullets cut through the air and penetrated the pirate's chest. Puff. A pirate frantically killed several navvies in front and laughed wildly. Such changes occur in every corner of the battlefield. The lieutenant generals took action one after another, and the captains of the Whitebeard pirates also dispatched one after another. However, Whitebeard was as calm as always, his eyes were hard to move towards Liang's direction, the demon knife that was constantly sucking blood. Even he felt a little palpitations in his heart. I'm afraid that this demon sword will transform into a terrifying existence. In addition, Liang, this monster, is simply unimaginable cooperation. Whitebeard's tone was slightly heavy, and he said slowly. A tyrannical weapon with a monster-like holder. When these two work together, the world will tremble a bit. In the area of 100 meters around the original ghost. Especially those corpses close to the first generation of ghosts have completely withered, like a tree without water, and the drought continues. The originally raised body turned into a skin and bones, and the scene was extremely terrifying. Too scary. Some of the navy who were close to the edge were staring at the withered corpse, their hearts were pounding, and an unconcealed sense of fear came to their hearts. This is more frightening than the picture of the stump of the flesh. The picture of a lot of corpses becoming withered, I am afraid that it can be imprinted in my heart for a lifetime, and it is difficult to let go. Buzz. Chapter 382-100 meters of Baron, and GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. And LT, 33 and GT. Buzz. The blade of the first generation of ghosts trembled and became even more excited. Feeling the huge amount of blood, it is rushing out crazily, causing its inner consciousness to tremble with excitement. Click. The ice cubes cracked open. Blood poured into its body from below the seawater and above the ice cubes. The nutrients it brings are quite abundant. Terrifying murderous aura filled the air, as if substantial murderous aura covered the surroundings. Very good. Liang's eyes flashed, and a strong interest appeared on his face. He closed his eyes slightly, and felt the substantive murderous aura that was everywhere around him. The scale of this murderous aura was terrifying. For ordinary people, it is a problem to move around in this murderous aura. The closer you are to the first generation of Gito, the easier it is to be influenced by the mind, and frantically start killing people around you. In short, mental breakdown, crazy. However, for Liang, such murderous aura was far from being able to shake his spiritual power. Congratulations to the host. Open the modifier, the murderous value is plus 999,999. Open black lens bracket. Comprehend the realm of killing gods. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Breakthrough novice. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Breakthrough entry. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Breakthrough proficiency. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Breakthrough master. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Breakthrough master. Close black lens bracket. Suddenly, Liang's eyelids jumped, slightly surprised. Unexpectedly, the system suddenly gave him an extreme murderous field. Looking at it in this way, he looked at the first generation Gito in front of him, and suddenly felt dull. Are you kidding? Children with such murderous aura? I'm asking too much. Liang waved his hand and said a little helplessly. The existence of the modifier simply made him set his sights higher, and the originally satisfied mood suddenly became unpleasant. The murderous aura of the first generation of ghosts is simply weak. In his eyes at this moment, even a child is inferior. Looking ahead, under the ability of the first generation Gito, the area of 100 meters in radius was completely desolate. Lifeless. The corpse became withered, like a dead tree. Under the seabed, a piece of bright red blood peeled off from the seawater and continuously merged into the blade of the original ghost. At the same time, unless the red light on the blade of Goosh became more and more obvious, from the only faint dark red, it gradually became clear, and the smooth blade, the dark red color, was very prominent. Beneath the translucent ice cube, the originally rich blood, accompanied by the devouring of the first generation Gito, was also concerned about the very obvious speed attenuation. On the ice cubes, a strange bright red flowed continuously from the surrounding positions, and concentrated in the same place. Like a spider web, in all directions. Stripes of blood, drilled into the first generation of ghosts, brought it a leap of evolution. All areas within a radius of 100 meters fell into silence. Only the first generation ghost Toru is still active, devouring blood frantically, and never stops. Therefore, even though the nearby battle is still going on, there are still people watching the movement from time to time. There is no reason for him, the movement here is too eye-catching. The ability to create a barren area of 100 meters is not small. Liang looked around and saw the withering of all the corpses within 100 meters. Immediately, he fixed his gaze on the body of the first generation ghost, with a bit of emotion. The loss of blood directly led to the withering of these corpses. And this is the change brought about by the first generation of ghosts. And LT, 34 and GT. Chapter 383-Crazy. Ah! A navy who had his left arm chopped off shouted in pain, his expression full of grief. Blood splashed on the ground, staining the ground on the entire ice cube red. Go to hell. In front of him, a pirate grinned and kicked out. Boom. A loud bang. The navy was kicked flying, and the landing position was not biased, and it landed in the area of tens of meters around the first generation of ghosts, flying across the ground. Although he was within 100 meters from the first generation of Onishi, he was warned not to fight in this area. However, there are still people who fall into it. This navy confronted a pirate in an area close to 50 meters. Therefore, after taking the pirate's kick, he suddenly moved closer to the position of the first generation of ghosts. Because the ice cube was too slippery, he was still rubbing against the ice cube, and 247 inches kept approaching the area of the original ghost. This scene shocked some people, and they quickly looked at it, wanting to see what would happen to this navy. Close. Even the navy himself felt a permeating breath lingering beside him, making his scalp numb, and his whole person not feeling well. The originally piercing pain became numb in an instant. With a frightened look in his eyes, he turned his head and looked at the only object in front of him. There, a knife was being erected and inserted into the ice, and a steady stream of blood rushed towards the position around the knife, including the blood on his own body. No, no, stop for me. The navy's eyes were infinitely enlarged, and he cried out loudly. He looked at the first generation ghost who was approaching, his whole heart was beating, and his face was full of fear. However, he still has no control over his body. He began to struggle desperately, holding the ice cube with both hands, but unfortunately, even though there was a trace of claw marks on the ice cube, his body was still approaching the position of the knife. Finally, he stayed in the area around 20 meters around the first generation of Onishi. His face was dull and he couldn't move. No, I have to get out of this hellish place quickly. The navy was terrified and quickly stood up with difficulty. Even though he lost a left arm, he was still able to persevere through gritted teeth. Blood spurted out from his left arm and was thrown on the ground. The next scene made him terrified. I see. The blood splattered on the ice cubes actually showed a neat and swift flow, and flowed towards the position behind him. There, he didn't need to look to know what it was. There is a terrifying demon knife there, swallowing people's blood. Suddenly, a terrifying murderous aura spread out, covering his entire being. This is. He was terrified, his lips trembled, and his whole body was affected by the murderous aura. Although it was only the aftermath, it brought a severe mental shock to him. He believed that this was the most terrifying murderous aura he had ever felt in his life. No one can possess this murderous aura, not even 3 generals. Kill, 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 kill. A mental shock reverberated in his mind, lingering constantly, unable to be erased. With a heavy body on his back, he looked at the battlefield in front of him, stretched out his hands, and looked very eager. He was eager to return to the battlefield, and he did not want to stay in this place. Chapter 383-Crazy. NLT, 35 and GT. With a heavy body on his back, he looked at the battlefield in front of him, stretched out his hands, and looked very eager. He was eager to return to the battlefield, and he did not want to stay in this place. Here, he left a shadow that was too terrifying. I can't stay here, let me go. The Navy was completely panicked. He stepped on ice cubes under his feet, and the pain in his left arm was completely forgotten by him. Under the domination of fear, he even forgot his own pain. It's just that a looming murderous aura still exists around him, making his expression sometimes crazy and sometimes eager to live. I want to live, I don't want to die. A strong desire to survive made his eyes gradually spread bloodshot, his expression became hideous, and his face was distorted, making people shudder. He took the first step with difficulty, and then took the second step, ready to go to the battlefield ahead. However, although the distance in front was not far, it gave him a feeling that he would never be able to get close. This feeling made his heart gradually become heavy and tired. Tired. If you are tired, just close your eyes. Tired. Tired. A voice kept repeating in his ear, causing his spirit to be slack. The blood from his left arm continued to drain, and his face became pale and bloodless. I am so tired. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, his words were low and lifeless. He always felt that his eyelids seemed to be pressed down by a heavy stone, which made him keep closing his eyes, and it was very difficult to open them. Too tired, he felt that his body was too tired, and he couldn't wait to close his eyes. Finally, he closed his eyes. Just 3 seconds later, he opened his eyes again, his eyes became blood red, his face was evil, and he gave out a sinister smile. Gia 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 Gia. His eyes turned, and for the first time, he was looking for the existence of signs of life here. He has fallen into a state of madness, and has been completely mentally broken down by the murderous aura of the first generation of ghosts. Therefore, any life he faces next, he will mercilessly kill each other. Suddenly, he saw that there was a young man beside the first generation Guido, who was exuding an amazing vitality, making his smile closer to a state of madness. Well, Li Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was a little surprised to see the changes in the Navy. Unexpectedly, the influence of the first generation of ghosts, the ability is quite good. At least, in the face of this ordinary Navy soldier, he broke through the opponent's inner defense line and directly crushed the remaining spiritual defense. Therefore, the present change occurs. This is also the so-called, enchanted. After being enchanted, he doesn't care about anyone or any faction, and becomes a machine that only knows how to kill. Die. Navy 3.5 frantically rushed towards Li Yang's position, looking crazy and laughing. Original. A group of people outside the arena watched the changes in the Navy, and when their hearts were trembling, they saw the scene of the local rushing towards Li Yang, and immediately shook their heads helplessly. That idiot. Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel gritted his teeth and said with an angry face. If he pounces on the pirates, his mood will change slightly. But I didn't expect that the other party would pounce on Li Yang for the first time, which is undoubtedly a dead end. But seeing the blood-filled scene around the first generation Goosh, the Flying Squirrel felt cold in his heart. This demon knife was simply too terrifying. A few tens of meters apart, it can still make people's spirits collapse and turn into an irrational killing machine. This was the first time he had seen a person who lost his mind just under the influence of a knife. NLT, 36 and GT. Chapter 384 The Power of the Demon Knife. I have to admit that the ability of this demon sword is really terrifying. If you are close to the surroundings, you can break through people's spiritual defenses and make people crazy, then the person who holds this demon sword alone can be invincible. Even Flying Squirrel himself does not think that he has the ability to resist the evil spirit of this demon sword. At the same time, that crazy navy was in everyone's sight. Everyone can clearly see that because of the influence of the demon sword, an ordinary navy has become crazy and lost his mind. Demon knife. Akainu raised his brows, staring at the evil blade inserted on the ice cube in the distance, and said solemnly, "If the battlefield hadn't been changed as soon as possible, I'm afraid that now countless people have been affected by this demon sword. I always have a hunch that even we, maybe, will be affected." Aokiji frowned and said slowly. Even he did not confidently and calmly deal with the demon sword in front of him. 19 in the state of the province is not bad. If once a negative emotion arises in his heart, he will not think that he can resist the temptation of the demon knife. Therefore, he had an urge in his heart to immediately destroy this demon sword to avoid more innocent casualties in the future. But this is just a thought. The holder of this demon sword is not a good person. Even if someone restrains him, Aokiji will not think that he can destroy the demon sword. Not to mention whether it can be destroyed or not, if he can hold on to his life, it is already quite a remarkable achievement. Look, it's changed again. Huang Yuan's pupils shrank, and he said in a low voice. Position directly in front. The navy was rushing towards Li Yang's position, but just as he was about to approach Li Yang, it was also when the official first-generation ghost was within 10 meters. A monstrous murderous aura descended. Ah! The navy shouted and stood on the spot, all over his body, blood constantly spilling from his body. Tick-tock. The fresh blood flowed on the ice cubes, and the bright red and demonic color made people feel terrified and felt the scalp tingle. What exactly is the situation? How did it suddenly become like this? No one can explain clearly what is happening in front of you. What happened to him? A navy asked in a low voice, his lips trembling, his face full of fear. Silence. No one answered him, because no one could answer him either. Everyone looked at the change of the navy, their hearts were terrified, and their bodies trembled involuntarily. It can be seen that the blood of the navy's body spread directly on the ice. And his whole person quickly turned into a dry corpse, unable to die any longer. Oh! Li Yang's eyes flashed and he was surprised again. Looking at it this way, the first-generation Ito has a lot of abilities. It is also possible to suck the blood of people with such a strange ability. Although there is a regional limitation, this ability is quite terrifying. If you deal with ordinary people, put this knife on the ground, you can effectively kill all ordinary people, as many as you come. Buzz. Chapter 384 The Power of the Demon Sword. NLT, 37 and GT. Buzz. The blade of the first generation of ghosts also trembled. Obviously, after killing the navy, it seemed even more excited, and the blade was shaking. For the recovery of his own strength, the first-generation Onitaru also showed considerable excitement. Is this your peak strength? Li Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and said. However, evolution is continuing. That is to say, the evolution of the first-generation Ito has not stopped yet. This is only half of his ability to evolve. The truly terrifying ability has not yet been fully demonstrated. Seeing this, Li Yang's anticipation became stronger, and curiosity rushed to his forehead. He can't wait to see what kind of terrifying power it will bring if the first generation of Ghost Toru is completed, and even he can foresee it. The future first-generation Onishi is definitely in the weapon, with absolute dominance. In the battlefield ahead. Suppressed and silent. Seeing a Navy's body become dry after being directly sucked all the blood, it really made them feel terrified. Such a picture is unacceptable to the Navy and pirates with strong psychological qualities. If it is a human, the ability of the devil fruit is not bad, but this is just a knife coming, which makes it difficult for them to accept. This knife, has it ever eaten a devil fruit? If not, why does it have such terrifying abilities? What the hell is going on? It's terrifying, it sucks all the blood of people. All battlefields, stay away from here again, everyone, leave here. A lieutenant general gritted his teeth and shouted with unconcealed fear in his eyes. Seeing the scene just now, everyone knew that the evil sword was so different. Naturally, they did not dare to approach the area around the sword to fight. This will not only hurt himself, but if he becomes crazy, he will kill his own people without mercy. What an evil demon knife. Marco stood beside Whitebeard and whispered. It has its own consciousness. If you guess correctly, it is the rumored one, the first generation of ghosts. This is a self-aware demon sword. No wonder it brought about such a terrifying change. It turns out that the corners of Bybird's mouth moved slightly, and he exhaled heavily, saying. However, 393 feet's expression was also full of solemnity, looking at the demon knife in front of him, his eyes fixed. Even he may not have absolute certainty that he can completely control the knife. Thinking of this, he glanced at Li Ang's position with an inexplicable expression. If you say. If this monster was controlled by the demon knife, it would be too crazy. Everyone present will die, and no one will be spared. The terrifying strength of this monster, coupled with the original evil of the demon sword, cooperated with each other, and Whitebeard also felt a deep sense of powerlessness in his heart. Too strong. Just by imagining it, you can guess that picture. One person, one knife, standing on top of countless corpses, has absolute dominance. Even Whitebeard himself felt powerless. He has never been arrogant to think that his strength is the first in the world. Many times, he could calmly analyze the changes on the battlefield, otherwise, he would not be able to play against the warring states at all. Therefore, the results of his analysis can show that if he fights with Li Ang, the chance of him surviving is less than 20%. Even at its peak, the chance of survival is less than 50%. What a terrible probability this is. You know, he is a Whitebeard across the sea. But even so, facing Li Ang, he couldn't hold the mentality of winning. Chapter 385-Demon's Dance. Thinking of this, Whitebeard looked at Marco beside him, and said, notify others that they are not allowed to approach the 100-meter radius of the demon sword. You must keep this in mind. If you are affected by your spirit, do something to your own people. I will never forgive. Yes, Dad. Marco's face froze, and he left the place immediately. Under the subconscious interference of countless people, the battlefield was once again pulled away from the position of the demon sword. On the high platform, the warring states stared at the empty area of the demon sword. Except for the dry corpse, he could no longer see anything, and there was no trace of life. Do not. Except for one person. He looked at Li Ang, who was still indifferent, and his eyes flashed a little nervously. If even Li Ang is under control, then the battle will be completely changed. However, seeing Li Ang's relaxed expression, he felt a little relieved. Fortunately, the most terrible thing did not happen. It's fine if Li Ang is not a demon. As for other people, he can completely suppress them. Even Whitebeard can completely kill them. However, Li Ang cannot be killed. If he was present, the person he was most afraid of facing, this person would undoubtedly be Li Ang. Not to mention him, almost everyone agrees that facing Li Ang is the worst time. Damn, how can this kind of demon knife exist in the world? Sengoku gritted his teeth, thinking to himself. The existence of a demon sword that can bring about such terrifying changes in this world is simply destroying the balance of this world. The other side. The three generals looked at the demon sword without blinking, took a deep breath, and then gradually retracted their gazes. They made up their minds, no matter what, they would never provoke this demon sword and the holder of this demon sword. That area of the battlefield can be left to the demon sword. As for the rest, there's nothing they can do. The changes in the current situation were unexpected by the three of them. After the game, they could not imagine that there was such a terrifying demon sword. In addition to the variable Liang, there is also a demon sword, which also has the ability to affect the changes of the battle situation. Of course. If you deliberately avoid it, it is not impossible to avoid some serious consequences. Let people stay away from the demon sword, diaresis. Akainu's face turned depressed and said solemnly. Everyone did it subconsciously. We don't need to worry about this. Aokiji looked at the changes in the battlefield ahead and whispered. Whether it is a pirate or a navy, they have already changed their battlefield, so there is no need to worry about the situation that the demon sword will affect people's consciousness. This monster, even the weapon is a monster. Huang Yuan looked at Liang involuntarily. The relaxed and natural appearance of the other party really made him depressed. If he is a demon knife, it is definitely impossible for the reason to be controlled by others. However, seeing Liang's indifferent appearance, it can be shown that the ability of the demon sword cannot affect Liang. Or maybe it's the demon sword that hasn't begun to affect Liang. In the second guess, it can be concluded that the demon knife is still very afraid of Liang, so it does not dare to act rashly. Only this explanation can explain Liang's indifferent demeanor at the moment. The combination of the two monsters is a perfect match. However, thinking of the terrifying combat power that such a combination can bring, the spine of the yellow monkey couldn't help shedding cold sweat. What kind of terrible power will the cooperation between monsters and monsters bring? Just thinking of this, Huang Yuan didn't dare to think further down. In the battlefield. The battle between the navy and the pirates is still going on. There is a coming and going, probably due to the influence of the demon sword. The number of people who died here has gradually decreased. Basically, everyone has a hard time forgetting the scene where the demon knife sucked a person's blood alive. Chapter 385-Dance of Demons, NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 39 NGT. There is a coming and going, probably due to the influence of the demon sword. The number of people who died here has gradually decreased. Basically, everyone has a hard time forgetting the scene where the demon knife sucked a person's blood alive. That picture will make them unforgettable in this lifetime. However, war is still war. When a pirate shouted, "Save Ace!" When these words came out, all the pirates boiled, and their expressions became bloody again. They looked at Ace on the execution platform, gritted their teeth, and shouted loudly. "Ace, we're here to save you." A group of pirates frantically launched the killing. Naturally, the navy was not far behind. Under the leadership of the lieutenant generals, both sides suffered heavy casualties. The war seemed to have returned to its previous state, as if the existence of the demon sword had not had any effect on them. It's just that people with a heart can find that when basically everyone looks at the area of the demon knife, there is a strong sense of fear in their eyes. This is a spontaneous sense of fear that cannot be changed. Kill. The war broke out again very fiercely. The blood splattered on the ice cubes, dyeing another battlefield red. Chiwahai is also on the battlefield, each dealing with the enemy at will. Hancock's beautiful eyes looked at Liang's position, and her delicate face carried a strong sense of admiration. She did not feel the horror of the demon knife at all. Lord Liang, he is still as strong as ever. Hancock's red lips parted slightly, and he whispered to himself. There was a vacuum in the area around her, and no one dared to approach it easily. Because she completely disregarded the enemy and me, and even killed the navy, it also caused the navy to have a psychological shadow on her. Meanwhile, the other side. Moonlight Moria, Doflamingo, Bartholomew Bear, and Hawkeye, when they collided with the enemy, the corner of the light inevitably looked at the area of the demon sword. What they could catch in their eyes was a feeling of trembling. It was the first time they had seen such a demon knife in their lives. And on the original battlefield, Liang sat on the edge, his eyes focused, and he stared at the first-generation ghost in front of him without blinking. Around him, the terrifying murderous aura became stronger and stronger, and the murderous aura that was almost solidified lingered around. But he still looked calm and was not affected by this murderous aura in the slightest. With the ultimate mental power and the ultimate murderous aura originally controlled, the so-called murderous aura of the first-generation Guido, to him, is simply a pediatrician. Suddenly, the first-generation ghost Wangda's Toru has undergone very obvious changes. The murderous aura it exudes contains a deterrent force for the same kind. Around the area where it is located, next to the withered corpses, there are blades, weapons, and so on. At this moment, a shocking picture appeared. I see. These fallen knives, at this moment, actually moved. That's right. They moved and trembled constantly. Liang's eyes flashed, and his smile became even brighter. The Emperor in the sword. It can be inferred that the demon knife has the ability to suppress similar knives. And those knives that fell to the ground were trembling with fear. They have no intelligence, but they have been influenced by congenital, so they tremble unconsciously. At the moment, all the blades surrendered to the position of the demon sword. The knives trembled wildly, and the picture was particularly terrifying, which was called a dance of demons. Chapter 386 _ the scene that subverts the outlook on life. Silence. The war came to an abrupt end again. Because of Liang, because of a knife, this war has been terminated countless times. They stared blankly at Liang's direction with a dumbfounded expression. Knife, does the knife move? A pirate's lips trembled, his expression horrified, and he whispered. He lowered his head and looked at the blade he was holding, speechless for a while. Growing up so big, his weapon has always been a knife. However, he had never heard of the fact that the knife would move on its own. And now, he finally saw it. Is it because of the influence of that demon sword? If I'm not wrong, I can feel these knives, they are shaking. They are shaking, shaking with fear. It's like, when we face a more powerful enemy, the kind of oppression from the momentum makes us shiver. They are the same. My God, can knives be afraid too? Quote. The Navy and pirates were all excited about it. Seeing countless images of trembling blades, this is simply the most terrifying scene they have ever seen in their life. For a long time, they did not think that the knife was spiritual. And when they saw the scene ahead, they had to doubt the beliefs they had believed in the past. Do knives really have no spirituality? But how to explain what happened in front of you? 817, why so many blades are trembling at the same time? Artificial. This is by no means man-made. Unless, someone can avoid everyone's eyes, and then, at the same time, use the clone technique to make these blades tremble. But this possibility is obviously lower. Does the knife in our hands really have no spirituality? A Navy stared blankly at the blade in his hand and whispered to himself. Everyone's mind has been subverted. At this moment, almost everyone in the audience, including the top of the Navy, Whitebeard, was shocked. Because of a demon knife, all the blades were trembling. It opened a whole new door for them. Knives are also afraid. On the Moby Dick, Whitebeard was standing on the deck, looking at Naginata beside him, with an inexplicable expression. His lips moved slightly. Are you also spiritual? Even he couldn't help but have this ridiculous idea. That's right. Just a ridiculous idea. In the past, he only kept this knife as a souvenir. However, he never thought about whether the knife himself has his own wisdom. This BJAA problem exists only in the world of fantasy. This is what he can be sure of. the blade is a dead thing, and it is impossible to have spirituality. This concept, basically hovering in everyone's head, can never be changed. Until they saw the picture in front of them now, in an instant, they overturned the beliefs and ideas they had been firm on for many years. If it is said that the knife has no spirituality, why is it shaking? It's trembling, it can be seen that it is afraid. Since it can be afraid, why does it not have its own intelligence? This question made everyone present silent, and it was completely impossible to come up with an answer. If it is said that the knife is wise, if they are now, they can be absolutely sure without saying a word. Indeed. They have seen the moving knife, can't they explain that the knife is spiritual? Chapter 386 _ the scene that subverts the outlook on life. They have seen the moving knife, can't they explain that the knife is spiritual? But if the knife has spirituality, why don't they feel it on weekdays? Why did they wait until now before they could see the fear of the knife? The source of everything seems to be on the body of the demon sword. The center of the battlefield. Hawkeye held the black sword knight in both hands, his hands trembled unconsciously, his eyes were a bit horrified, and his whole face was full of disbelief. Black saber knight, trembling. What is it afraid of? Compared with the ordinary blade, it is more keenly aware that the breath that belongs to the first generation of ghosts not far away is constantly approaching. Demon knife. Hawkeye's eyes flashed, and there was a hint of inference in his heart. But just like that, his mood became more and more tumbling. You must know that what he has in his hand is the black sword knight that belongs to the supreme sword. Ordinary knives would be afraid, he believed. Because, those are just some ordinary blades, and they don't have such tyrannical power. But what he has in his hand is the supreme sword. Even so, was he shivering under the influence of the demon sword? Even though it wasn't very obvious, Hawkeye could feel that the knife in his hand was shaking. This is still a situation that only occurs when there is a certain distance. If it is close, he couldn't imagine what the outcome would be. Gradually, Heidaoyi also calmed down, perhaps because of the dignity of its supreme sword. He was unwilling to surrender like this, and thus resisted. The whole place was silent. Warring States stood on the high platform, quietly looking at the picture in front of him, his lips moved slightly, unable to speak. The knife moves by itself, and the weapon has its own intelligence. Demon sword, demon sword. He could only fix his eyes on the first generation Onishi, and kept repeating these two words. The demon sword can bring about such a terrifying change. The scene was very strange, the breeze was blowing, and even goosebumps came up. Whether it's the Navy or the pirates, they seem to have forgotten their original goal. Instead, focus on irrelevant scenes. Buzz. The picture of the trembling blades is really shocking. Marin Vando with a population of several 100,000. Trapped in eerie silence. There was no sound, as if no one existed. All that was left was the sharp sound of the trembling blade, and nothing else. Taking the first generation of ghosts as the center point, all the knives were trembling, feeling the terrifying aura that permeated the body of the demon knives, and they were terrified. Although unconscious, he was still shivering. It's amazing. Li Ang's eyes twinkled brightly, quietly watching the evolution of the first generation Gito, and then looking at the surrendered knives around, a bright smile appeared on his face. It is a pleasant surprise to be able to influence other people's knives. If on the battlefield, the enemy's knives are out of control, what will be the result? The results speak for themselves. He can do it, easily, and directly defeat the enemy. Of course. Although Liang himself does not need this ability, he is naturally very relieved to see such a monster's weapon born, and it is his weapon. That's fine, if the weapon isn't a monster, how can it work with you? However, if it doesn't know how to praise it and thinks that it has evolved, it will be able to dominate everything, then it will have to let him experience some hardships. Hope, it's not so stupid. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking so in his heart. And LT, 42 and GT. Chapter 387-transformation. Image worms transmit the picture of the battlefield to every corner of the world. Especially in the area of 100 meters, all the scenes where the blades trembled were seen by many civilians and pirates in the world. Thousands of knives, surrendering to one knife, the picture is really unbelievable. At this time, the first generation Goosh was still sucking blood, and the blood in the sea was gradually swallowed up by the glass, and the originally bright red seawater gradually became translucent. You can see the pictures of those blood being swallowed cleanly at a considerable speed with the naked eye. The scene is extremely terrifying and heart-wrenching. And the blood on the ice cubes has long since dried up. The corpse can no longer provide blood, because all the corpses here have become withered, like plants without water, and there are still a pile of residues left behind. It's scary. A navy kneeled on the ground with weak legs, his face full of fear. With just one knife, his fighting spirit completely disappeared. The war was completely suspended because of this sudden scene. Silence. No sound. Image worms spread the word of war to the islands. On an island far away from Marin Bando. Chambord Islands. The sun was shining down, and a lot of air bubbles were floating in the air. Around the huge screen in the central area, a group of civilians watched in silence. Some people held the camera with both hands and fell directly to the ground. Their legs were weak, and they slumped on the ground. What is this situation? My God, does the knife have its own intelligence? Demon sword, this is the real demon sword, it's terrible. Only a demon knife has such a terrifying ability. But, even a demon knife, can it make dead objects move? If the knife has no intelligence, why do they move? Dead creatures are also afraid. Quote. Countless people started discussions, their voices trembled, and their moods were full of fear. When they saw all the blades, surrendered to a knife, and shivered, their view of the world changed completely. Without seeing it with their own eyes, they would never believe that such a thing happened. Why does the knife move by itself? It is not life, nor does it possess its own intelligence. But it just moved on its own, without any traction. The scene of thousands of knives shivering at the same time is too scary. Everyone here couldn't help but look at the saber on his waist, his lips slightly parted, and he was speechless for a while. Does your own knife also have spirituality? All of a sudden, everyone's view of the knife has completely changed. Under this picture, who would dare to say that the knife is a dead thing? There is no explanation that can explain what is happening in front of you. All I can say is, it's ridiculous. In this war, there is finally a variable. And the variable, unexpectedly, is this knife. Wait, did you see that the scene just flashed away and saw a young man beside the demon sword? It seems to be true, that young man is quite familiar, seems to have seen it somewhere. Quote. The crowd started to discuss and opened their mouths one after another. Some people hurriedly took out their cameras and flipped through the pictures they had just taken. The final result shocked them even more. A young man held the camera in both hands, his lips trembled, and he lost his voice. In this war, what kind of existence did I see? Who is it? The rest of the people asked. Chapter 387-transformation. NLT, 43 and GT. The rest of the people asked. Yes, Li Ang. The young man took a deep breath and said solemnly, in the picture I captured just now, the person sitting next to the demon saber is Li Ang. He is completely undisturbed by this demon saber. My God, it turned out to be Li Ang. How could he be involved in this war? If he does, it will be really big news. I suspect that he may be the master of the demon sword. Suddenly, a voice appeared, the man's eyes flickered, and he said solemnly, since he is standing next to the demon sword, and there is no life in the radius of 100 meters. From this perspective, there is no other explanation except that he is the owner of the demon sword. A group of people fell into silence, peeping at each other, and their eyes were full of horror. Li Ang, who can be called a monster, combined with a terrifying demon knife, what kind of existence is this? The hearts of the people were filled with a deep sense of shock, unable to speak. Is there anyone in the world who can compete with him? Thinking of this, everyone unanimously agreed and directly denied it. I'm afraid, in this world, there will be no one who can compete with him. Marin Vando. Li Ang looked at the first-generation Goosh in front of him, and the speed of the other party's blood-sucking gradually decreased, which made him have a hunch that he should be approaching the brink of complete transformation. As the evolution complete, his eyes narrowed slightly, and the smile on his face deepened. Seeing the transformation of the first generation of ghosts, his mood is self-evident. After all, this is his saber. A weapon that can really penetrate his eyes. There is only such a first-generation ghost. As for the other supreme swords, or something else, he really couldn't see it. For example, he had seen Hawkeye's black saber knight, but he didn't have any urge to take it away. However, the first generation of ghosts is also very difficult to tame. But this is more challenging for Li Ang. Challenging things, he always liked. Especially tame a knife, which is even more expected. Buzz. The blade of the first generation Goosh was shaking, the dark red color gradually became bright red, and it seemed that countless lives had been harvested on the blade. Bright red blood flowed on the blade as if alive. Boom. A terrifying aura filled the audience. Under its breath, all the blades trembled more obviously. The Emperor in the sword. The corners of Li Ang's mouth moved slightly. Nuo Li's once again felt the position of the first-generation Goosh in the sword. Any weapon that feels its breath will tremble. So, isn't it enough to justify its horror? This is quite clear. The first generation of ghosts is the most shining one of all knives, and it is at the top of all weapons. Just possessing self-awareness and self-evolving abilities can throw the rest of the supreme knives away a dozen streets away. Finally, the speed of blood-sucking stopped. This also means that the transformation of the first generation of ghosts is also completely over. There was still a trace of blood on the translucent ice cube. Within a radius of hundreds of meters, the blood of all the corpses was almost sucked clean, which officially accomplished the transformation of the first generation of ghosts. He has evolved to the extreme. As strong as it was at the beginning, it is as strong as it is now. This is its peak. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 388-Demon Knife Backlash. In the sun. The dazzling light shines on the blade of the first generation Onishi. The originally sharp and white blade has become bright red, and it is extremely strange, as if it can drip blood, exuding a gloomy aura. Simply approaching its surroundings, you can feel the cold air. The temperature plummeted. It also carried a terrifying murderous aura, as if substantial, surrounding the surroundings. The long blade sank into the ice cubes, and blood filled the surroundings, making its figure even more attractive. It has been completely transformed. Silence. He stared blankly at this demon knife, his eyes fixed on it. They can feel that there is an incredible weapon in this world, and it was born in their eyes. The way they were born made them feel terrified. Relying on blood. That's right. The source of the weapon that evolved by relying on blood made each of them shudder and numb their scalps. Seems to have worked. A pirate looked frightened and whispered. Shocking demon sword is about to be born. It's hard to imagine how its existence will disturb this sea area. My God, it's the first time I've seen such a terrifying weapon. It's so far apart, just looking at its appearance, I feel a surge of pressure in my heart. The 997th Army and the pirates were stunned, and their eyes were the same. Sengoku, Akainu, Kizaru and others also looked at the appearance of the first-generation ghost after the successful transformation. The bright red blade is as smooth as a mirror, and it can also reflect light, allowing people to illuminate their faces and map them on the blade. As if, the whole face, in a pool of blood, was extremely terrifying. On the deck of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard and Marco looked at the position of the first-generation Geto without blinking and staring. Even Whitebeard himself noticed that the first-generation Geto in front of him was sweeping in with a terrifying aura, looming. Compared with the previous one, its breath is gradually restrained. This means that all the momentum is solidified in the body, waiting for the moment of the explosion. Sure enough, there is self-awareness. Whitebeard's face was low and he said slowly. Suddenly, in everyone's sight, the first-generation Onito, who was submerged on the ice, moved. Click. The ice cube cracked with traces, and it actually moved on its own, and gradually broke free from the obstruction of the ice cube, bringing a terrible force to cut the ice cube. Whoa! The ice cubes fell into the sea, raising the sea water into waves, BJDC, rippling ripples, spreading around, showing a circular arc. Is this your transformed form? Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at the first-generation Goosh in front of him, and whispered to himself. Right in his sight. The first generation of ghosts attacked in his direction fiercely. The sharp, bright red blade brought a terrifying murderous aura that enveloped Liang. The sharp point of the knife was aimed at Liang's forehead and stabbed directly. Call out. The first generation of ghosts cut through the air, and the speed was very fast. This scene shocked everyone. Liang, isn't he the owner of this demon sword? Why? Chapter 388-Demon Knife Backlash. NLT, 45 and GT. Why? The demon knife was going to take the initiative to attack its master. They couldn't believe this picture. The demon knife is going to attack its master. Can Liang escape? I don't know, both of them are extremely terrifying monsters. Liang is a monster, and this demon saber is not too bad. A confrontation at this level is really rare in the world. It's terrifying. I was thinking just now, how could a demon sword that already possesses self-awareness be willing to become a weapon for human beings? At this moment, he is going to attack Liang. Let's see, Liang, what will he do? Quote. Warring State's eyes flashed, and he raised his thoughts in his heart, saying, will it be successful? If the first-generation Geto succeeded in killing Liang, of course, this result would be absolutely beneficial and harmless to the Navy headquarters. Although such a terrifying demon knife appeared in this world, if Liang dies here, they can accept the result. The most terrifying result is that Liang has nothing to do, and the demon knife is still under his control. At that time, no one in the world will be able to contain Liang's power. This kid is going to be attacked by the demon knife. Whitebeard's eyelids twitched and he said slowly. Dad, do you think the demon sword can succeed? Marco frowned and asked in a low voice. Whitebeard shook his head. It's hard to say, both of them are monster level. Whoever wins and who loses is a reasonable thing. Hawkeye, Doflamingo and others also watched this scene one after another. In everyone's sight. In Liang's eyes, the sharp blade of the first-generation Goosh had almost reached his forehead, less than a meter away, and the speed was fleeting. Ordinary people can't see clearly at all. However, his expression remained calm and unmoved. Kill, 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 kill. An astonishing killing intent enveloped Liang, trying to influence his consciousness. Jia 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 Jia. A harsh laughter lingered in Liang's ears. He heard correctly, this laughter came from the devil in the first generation of ghosts, which he called the existence of blood. I finally evolved. The entire blade of the first generation of ghosts trembled with excitement, and it was difficult to hide. It can be seen how turbulent the mood of the devil hidden in the first generation of ghosts is. So, you're going to attack me? Liang's face was calm, and he smiled lightly. My master must not be weak. Blood's answer was very straightforward, with a strong sense of confidence. The implication is that if Liang dies, it will prove that Liang is incapable of being its master, let alone controlling it. If you want to attack the master, just say it straight, why do you have to be pretentious? You are still too confident, that's all. You should also let you know that your so-called transformation, the so-called evolution, in my eyes, it is still quite vulnerable. Ah. Only if you understand what absolute power is, will you be able to keep yourselves safe. Originally, I thought you were a smart guy, but I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Li Ang was expressionless, shook his head, and said bluntly. In his ear, there was still a voice disturbing his consciousness. Unfortunately. Let the other party miscalculate, his mental power will not be affected by any existence. Do you think you're the only one with a tyrannical murderous aura? I'm sorry, I do too. Li Ang's eyes narrowed slightly, looking at the first generation of ghosts who was about to arrive in front of him. Very simply, he covered the armed color with both hands and directly grabbed the sharp point of the knife. At the same time, buzz. A terrifying murderous aura erupted from his body, and this murderous aura directly crushed the murderous aura emanating from the first generation Goosh in a crushing manner. Killing God domain. The corners of Li Ang's mouth moved slightly, and his hands easily grasped the sharp blade of the first generation of ghosts, and instantly imprisoned the first generation of ghosts, unable to move. In just one face-to-face, the murderous aura of the first generation Goosh was completely defeated by the murderous aura of Li Ang. The two are not always on the same level. Chapter 389-Blood Sanctuary. Buzz. Even if he was firmly caught, the first generation Gito still showed tenacious willpower, resisting Li Ang, and once again exuding a murderous aura that affected his spirit. It's useless. Li Ang's face was expressionless, and the ultimate murderous aura on his body directly shrouded the body of the first generation Goosh, and instantly washed away the murderous aura of the other party. At this time, the first generation of ghosts seemed to tremble, and the blade shook involuntarily. Li Ang covered his arms with armed colors, grabbed the blade directly, and remained unmoved. The sharp blade didn't even give him the slightest scar. As I said, the reason why I face your evolution indifferent is naturally because I don't think you can shake my status at all. Now, do you understand why I am so calm about your evolution? Li Ang's mouth moved slightly and said lightly. The first generation of ghosts panicked. The blood deposited inside was also full of panic. This is impossible. It's still as harsh as ever, with a deep sense of horror. Nothing is impossible. Li Ang's eyes flashed, his hands tightly grasped the blade of the first generation Goosh, and he slammed into the ice. Boom. A loud bang. The ice cubes cracked, and the first generation Gito went directly into the sea. At the same time, Li Ang directly stretched out his hand and caught the first generation Gito again, covering his hands with armed colors, and a terrifying power erupted. Holding the tip of the demon saber with his left hand and the handle of the sword with his right hand, he gradually bent both hands, using all his strength to twist the first generation Gito directly. No. The sound of blood was even more frightening. Feeling the distortion of its own body, it seemed to smell death. Li Ang's power made it feel like death. It still doesn't want to die, it has lived for so many years, how can it allow itself to easily die here? Never allow it. I said, I will make you understand the gap between you and me. Who made you disobedient, stupid guy? With a smile on his face, Li Ang said slowly. The muscle lines on his arms are obvious, and his hands are gradually closed, as if he is training strength, bending a sharp demon knife abruptly. This terrifying power is truly breathtaking. The demon sword, is it going to be broken? Not far away, a group of Navy and pirates stared blankly at Li Ang's actions. Unsurprisingly, it's too reluctant to deal with Li Ang. Even if the demon sword is strong, it still looks too fragile in front of this monster, Li Ang. This time, if Li Ang doesn't keep his hand, this demon saber will be destroyed. Will the world-shattering weapon above the supreme sword be destroyed? Quote. Everyone's lips trembled and they talked in low voices. Warring States fixed his eyes on the picture in front of him. Without blinking, he didn't dare to move his eyes at all, for fear of missing some wonderful scene. Sure enough, monsters are monsters. Such a terrifying demon sword can't help this monster. The final result is trouble. I'm afraid it will be that Li Ang completely controls this demon sword. Warring States whispered to himself, his expression became serious, and his heart was under great pressure. The gazes of countless people, including video worms, sent the picture to each island. No, I dare not, I was wrong. The first generation Goosh let out a cry of grief and begging for mercy, which was passed to Li Ang's ears. Chapter 389-Blood Sanctuary. NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 47 NGT. The first generation Goosh let out a cry of grief and begging for mercy, which was passed to Li Ang's ears. Hearing this, Li Ang's mouth curled into an arc, and he shook his head and said, "Do you still think that, as the strongest weapon in the world, you can do whatever you want, and I won't destroy you? If you think so, then you are very wrong. Your existence can certainly increase a lot of strength for me, I admit it. However, I have no rivals in this world. That is to say, whether you exist or not, my strength is still at the top of this world. Therefore, I will destroy you without any mercy." After some words, the trembling of the first generation of ghosts became more obvious. It turned out that it had just evolved and completed its transformation, and all its confidence and majesty had been shattered in front of Li Ang and no longer existed. Facing Li Ang is like facing its biggest nemesis in history. No matter how strong it is horrified to discover that it cannot shake Li Ang's existence. Disobedient weapons, just die. Li Ang's face was calm, and he increased his strength with both hands, bending the demon knife up. Buzz. The demon knife trembled, begging in horror. It is afraid, it doesn't want to just disappear into this world. If Li Ang really breaks it, it may not disappear, but its power will definitely weaken countless times. At that time, it will no longer be able to affect the consciousness of others, let alone control others. Your flexibility isn't bad, it didn't break. Li Ang looked at the twisted demon saber in his hand, and smiled faintly with a hint of surprise. I don't dare, don't destroy me, I really don't dare. From now on, I will enshrine you as my master, and I will never disobey the order. If you violate it, you will be punished by heaven and let me disappear. The blood in the demon knife made a terrifying sound again. At this moment, Li Ang stopped and said, "This time, I will spare your life. If there is another time, you know what the consequences will be. I will find a devil fruit power user, and let him use the power of the devil fruit to turn you into a pile of rusty garbage." I understand. Okay, since that's the case, let me see, you have evolved, and how many heart abilities will you breed? Hope, don't let me down again. Li Ang's expression gradually became calm. Holding the handle of the knife with his right hand, he said bluntly. Just as his words fell. Buzz. A terrifying murderous aura spread from the first generation Goosh, and strips of bright red rattan wrapped around Li Ang's wrist, completely merging with the body and inseparable. This is the true unity of man and knife. In addition to this, the terrifying bright red murderous aura became substantial, and a layer of light red protection appeared on Li Ang's body. The whole person is wrapped in this light red protective film. With the top of the head, eyes, feet, hands, etc., every part of the body is completely shrouded in it. One look. Li Ang's appearance looked like a knight in armor, with a light red protective film all over his body, like a layer of bright red and demonic armor, which was airtight. Gradually, on the top of his head, a bright red armor also appeared, wrapping the entire head in the armor, only showing his eyes, and he couldn't see his face clearly. It's like the protective shield worn when compared in Western swords. At the position of the arm, a layer of bright red armor appeared, and the chest was accompanied by a layer of bright red armor, which was extremely hard. Under his feet, a pair of bright red iron shoes appeared. Finally, Li Ang's whole body was covered by armor, and he couldn't see any leaking gaps. He carried the first-generation ghost in his right hand, which was closely integrated with the wrist, and the whole body was also covered by the armor emanating from the first-generation ghost. It's like wearing a sacred garment with bright red blood. NLT, 48 and GT. Chapter 380-Killing. At this time, Liang only felt that his whole body was wrapped in armor. His eyes could look at the scene outside, and, on the surface of the skin, there was a layer of hard protective armor to block all attacks from the outside world for him. Is this your brand new ability? Very good. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he muttered to himself. Involuntarily, he looked down at the first-generation ghost in his hand, and a smile appeared on his face. This ability makes him very satisfied. Not only did the defense increase, but the murderous aura around him also became more intense. In this way, it can have a very effective influence and impact on the enemy. Name it, the Holy Clothes of Blood. Then, Liang thought about it, and sure enough, in his mind, the first-generation Gush could shrink the blood holy outfit on his body. The pale red armor disappeared, and his face was exposed to the air again. With a thought of 060, the first-generation Gush once again emitted a reddish blood mist, wrapping him, and the armor gradually formed, directly entering the state of the blood holy outfit. Flexible. This scene shocked countless people present. What exactly is this? Seeing the layer of armor wrapped around Liang's body, they felt heart palpitations. What a strong breath, can a knife still be used like this? It was already powerful like a monster, but now, it has added the ability of the demon knife. It is hard to imagine how powerful this monster Liang will be. I always have an ominous premonition. The evil aura that spreads from his body makes me feel like I'm being stared at by a fierce beast, and I can't escape. Quote. Warring States also looked at Liang solemnly and said solemnly, what is this? Throughout the decades as a marshal, he has never seen Liang's changes at this moment. Relying on the demon knife, Zhang Ran can also give himself a layer of indestructible armor. This kind of change is the first time I have heard of it. Similar people and events have never happened before. Not only him, even Whitebeard has never heard of it. A weapon can bring such a huge change to the holder. They can feel that Liang's strength has become stronger. There is no doubt about this. Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru looked serious, their eyes focused on Liang without blinking. When will weapons be so useful? The corners of the yellow monkey's mouth moved slightly, and the tone was very heavy. After seeing the picture in front of him, in his heart, the understanding of the use of the weapon opened a new door again. If you didn't see Liang's changes, who would dare to believe that this layer of armor came from a knife? At the same time, Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling the changes in his body. Not only defense, but also a layer of armor. Moreover, after the blessing of the holy clothing of blood, his own body's strength, speed, agility, etc., seemed to have increased. That's right. You know, Liang's speed is already extreme. But this layer of blood holy clothing still increased his speed. It is conceivable what kind of speed and strength he can achieve now. Can it be faster and stronger? This is really incredible. Liang opened his eyes slightly, his eyes flickered, and he praised. Fortunately, I didn't get excited for a while and destroyed the first generation of ghosts. Otherwise, he would not be able to experience this feeling at the moment. Strength has become stronger. Moreover, it is not even a tiny bit, the increase is very obvious. Even he himself can feel that his strength is improving at an obvious speed. Chapter 390-Killing. NLT, 49 and GT. Even he himself can feel that his strength is improving at an obvious speed. If it is the current me, it seems that it is not impossible to kill the people here. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at the battlefield ahead through the bright red armor on his head, and muttered to himself. Warring States, Carp, Whitebeard. Even if these people join forces, he is not afraid. Now, he is confident that he can shake the alliance of these people and remain invincible. The increase in strength brought by the holy clothes of blood should not be underestimated. Then, I have to find someone to try it out. The beauty of the holy clothes of blood has brought me. He thought so in his heart, his eyes fixed on the battlefield in front of him, and he meditated in his heart. Then, take these people as targets. Buzz. A terrifying murderous aura rose into the sky. In everyone's terrified sight, Li Yang's figure disappeared instantly. Puff. A touch of bright red splattered in the air. The head of a navy was cut off directly and rolled on the ground. Puff. Another pirate died, and the body was cut into pieces by countless blades on the spot, leaving no bones left. Puff, puff, puff. In the middle of the battlefield, a terrifying picture appeared. Everyone can't see clearly where the enemy is and who the enemy is, and they have already killed a large number of people one after another. Whether it is a pirate or a navy, all of them have suffered a tragic massacre during this time. Yes, the devil, who is it? I can't see it at all, where is the man? The navy and pirates were frightened and stared at their side. It's a pity that no matter how they observe, it is completely impossible to find the trace of the enemy. Because the speed of the enemy is too fast, so fast that they can't catch it with the naked eye. More than a dozen people died strangely on the ground. What's even more terrifying is that after these people died, in the blink of an eye, the corpses became withered, and the blood inside seemed to be sucked dry, and did not flow on the ground at all. The strange death, the strange corpse, made their spirits face the brink of collapse. Not to mention an ordinary navy, even the lieutenant general of the headquarters stiffened, his lips trembled, and his expression couldn't hide the fear. Even they can't see where the enemy is. How to fight such a battle? Li Yang. Lieutenant Flying Squirrel narrowed his pupils and lost his voice. He had already deduced who this man was. 2.9 flashed away in his eyes. No need to think again, this person is definitely Li Yang. The speed of this monster is even faster. This way of killing, basically cannot find any traces. In the next second, someone will die, and everyone present can only wait to die. It's Li Yang. Warring States stood on the tower, his face became particularly heavy. He saw, a bright red shadow, flashed away. That figure, he can conclude, is definitely Li Yang, no one else. However, the speed of the other party made his heart skip a beat. Compared to when Li Yang was besieged at the beginning, the opponent's speed became even more terrifying. If it is now, even if they join forces to besiege Li Yang again, they will definitely not get a good result. Not sure, they will really be killed here on the spot. Chapter 381 _ The Transformation of Vitality. Why did he do it? Warring States gritted his teeth, his face was depressed, and he muttered to himself. Seeing Li Yang make his move, he felt that things had turned bad. For no reason, Li Yang would actually do it, which was beyond his expectations. Moreover, not only the navy, but even the pirates will not keep their hands. The manpower on both sides is constantly lost in Li Yang's slaughter. Do you want to stop him? Aokiji's face was heavy and he said slowly. At his speed now, I'm not sure to stop him. I'm just afraid that I will be tricked by him. Huang Yuan felt a lot of pressure in his heart and said solemnly. Seeing the flashing red shadow, his mood involuntarily became low. Originally, the speed gap between him and Li Yang was not very big. But looking at it now, the distance between him and Li Yang is getting further and further away. Now he doesn't think that he can interfere with Li Yang by rushing up. On the contrary, if he rushes up to 19, there is a 90% chance that he will be killed on the spot in this battlefield. Therefore, he did not dare to act rashly. Although watching Li Yang continue to kill the personnel of the navy, his heart is not happy, but it is better, he will rush to his own death. It is better to kill the people on your side than to kill yourself. Just sit back and wait. Akainu's eyes were a little frightened, and he said with lingering fears. He also didn't think he could defeat Li Yang in front of him. After seeing Li Yang's terrifying speed, he also retreated in his heart. What else can we do? Qingzi's words seemed very pale and powerless, and shook his head helplessly. Countless people have died in the scene. The Navy and the pirates together. It only took less than a minute, but it was already close to the horror of thousands of people. However, the strange thing is that the high-level personnel of the Navy headquarters are indifferent. They all fell into a dead silence, with absolutely no intention of doing anything. On the deck of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard's face was gloomy and his voice was hoarse. Li Yang, this kid, he actually kills people indiscriminately on the battlefield. Dad, let's just wait and see. The Navy headquarters didn't do anything. They want us to collide with Li Yang first. If Li Yang turns to attack us, it will be a big trouble. Marco's face was also very heavy, gritted his teeth, and said solemnly. Looking at the group of companions in front of him, being continuously killed, his mood is not good. It's just that the Navy headquarters didn't do anything, so naturally they couldn't act rashly. Provoking Li Yang is their biggest nightmare. Moreover, although Marco didn't want to admit it in his heart, he had to say that Li Yang's strength was stronger than the white-bearded father beside him. That terrifying speed is simply an enemy's nightmare. Even if it was him, he could only barely see a bright red shadow flashing away, and he could no longer capture any traces. If you let him face such a person, can he last for a minute? He shook his head helplessly. 1 minute. I'm afraid, if you can't even hold it for 30 seconds, you will be instantly killed. The center of the battlefield. The scene was terrifying. Chapter 381 _ The Transformation of Vitality. NLT, 51 and GT. The scene was terrifying. The corpses on the ground piled up into mountains, but they had become withered. And a bright red shadow flashed away in the crowd. Puff, puff, puff. One after another, the slashing slashes slashed at the people around. Whether it was a pirate or a navy, they were all suffering from this unstoppable terrifying force. They were terrified. Seeing the people around them approaching death one by one, how could they have maintained a calm attitude? My God, everyone is dead, everyone is dead. Where is the enemy? Where is the enemy? It's terrifying, they're all dead, can we still escape? Quote. The Navy and the pirates were in a panic, unable to extricate themselves. Seeing a picture of a person dying in front of them and the corpse withering, really made their heads a little unbearable for such a thing to happen. Moreover, the most terrifying thing is that they didn't even catch the shadow of the enemy. Instead, people keep dying. This is simply a one-sided massacre. They have no power to fight back, just like a target, standing still, enduring the destruction of the enemy. Puff. Li Yang took the first generation of ghosts and swept past, cutting off the head of a pirate. At the same time, the first generation of ghosts spread bright red vines, drilled directly into the corpse, and devoured the blood of the corpse in less than a second. Today, he is covered with a layer of bright red armor, majestic, imposing, and very attractive. How much blood was absorbed? Li Yang narrowed his eyes slightly and whispered to himself. The ability to absorb blood is naturally an ability he only discovered when he used the first generation gouge to kill the enemy. The blood sucked by the first generation of ghosts will be converted into a certain energy, which is stored in the blade of the first generation of ghosts, just like a storage space. As for the final use, that's too broad. The blood stored by the first generation Guido will eventually be transformed into vitality, which will be given to Li Yang continuously. That's right. To put it simply, the first generation Guido has the ability to deprive others of the vitality, and then store the vitality in the blade, and then pass it on to Li Yang. In this way, it is equivalent to Li Yang depriving these people of their vitality and passing it into his own body. However, this transformation process takes a certain amount of time. Because the first generation of ghosts suck the blood of people, not directly sucking vitality. Vitality is something that can only be talked about, not captured. It doesn't exist in any form at all. Only after sucking the blood, the first-generation Gush transmits a kind of energy to Liang. This energy is called life force by Liang. Because after feeling this energy and giving it to his body, Liang felt that the power of his body was stronger, without any side effects, as if even the cells had become very young and powerful. Therefore, if this demon knife is given to an elderly person, it is simply a thing that makes people lose their minds. It can deprive others of the blood and become the nourishment of one's own life. It is conceivable how much turmoil this will cause. Today, the amount of blood stored in the original ghost is 44/500. 500 is a stored limit range, which cannot be exceeded. And 44 are the people that Liang killed now, depriving them of the amount of blood afterward. This amount of fresh blood is then converted into some kind of magical energy in an hour by one manner, which is transmitted to Liang's own body. Chapter 392-Death on the Battlefield. From this, Liang can draw a conclusion. That is, if he kills enough people, he can live forever. That's right. Immortality has always been a dream of people. However, there is absolutely no one who can truly achieve this in this world. Of course. It is rumored that according to Doflamingo's words, the ability of the fruit of surgery can help a person live forever, that is, the state of immortality. But it's just a rumor. The real person has not yet appeared, and I don't know if it's true or not. However, if it is really realized, this person does not know how long he has lived, and his strength is definitely much more terrifying than the 4 emperors in the world. It's just that people like this don't usually appear in people's sights easily. With immortality, who would be so stupidly exposed in the sight of others? However, if this is the case, then he must have used the power of the devil fruit to achieve immortality. However, Liang used the magical ability of the first generation of ghosts to convert the nutrients of blood into vitality, and then use the first generation of ghosts as a transfer station to transfer it to his body. In this way, he can also maintain infinite vitality, which can be said to be immortal. As long as there are still people in this world, then Liang can maintain his vitality and remain absolutely immortal. One can imagine how terrifying his existence is. In other words, how bizarre the ability of the first generation of ghosts is. Even Liang was shocked when he learned of this ability. This ability is incredible. The power of the first generation of ghosts may not be its greatest ability. Its greatest ability is to absorb blood and convert it into vitality, so as to maintain people's immortality. That's its biggest secret. This secret, through the ages, may only be known by Liang. Otherwise, the first generation ego will not fall into his palm, but will always be controlled by the person who is constantly sucking life force. But this is also normal. After all, how many people have been able to withstand the evil breath and spiritual influence of the first generation Gush? You know, the first generation of ghosts will also backlash. But Liang easily withstood the backlash of the first generation of ghosts. If it was someone else, he would definitely not be able to block the ambitions of the first generation of ghosts so easily. Have a blast tilde. Liang's eyes narrowed slightly, and the corners of his mouth raised an arc. Through the red armor, he looked at the battlefield ahead, and made up his mind secretly. Since they are all dead, wouldn't it be better to let these people die under his sword? Anyway, war always kills people. Whether it is a navy or a pirate, they will all die here. Then let him kill, let him as a killer, add a bit of fun to the fight. Immediately after. On the battlefield, the navy and pirates were once again in fear. The number of people continues to decrease, and the scene is extremely terrifying. In a 1-to-1 ratio, Liang killed a pirate to kill a navy, maintaining the balance of the war. Not biased to either side. That's why, neither the people from Whitebeard's side nor the personnel of the Navy headquarters acted rashly, and felt a little relieved. As long as it wasn't their own unilateral death, they could still reluctantly accept such a result. But looking at the battlefield, people were constantly being killed, and after the corpses became withered, their hearts were still chilled, and their scalps were numb. Whitebeard, who is used to seeing countless big scenes, has a trace of being unable to look directly at such a battlefield. As the current situation continues, our people continue to die, and the Navy's people continue to die, so it is not the worst outcome for us. Chapter 392-Death on the Battlefield. As the current situation continues, our people continue to die, and the Navy's people continue to die, so it is not the worst outcome for us. Look directly, the number of navies is far more than us. Therefore, it can be inferred that we are still at a disadvantage. Dad, what do you think? Marco looked at the Whitebeard beside him and asked in a low voice. Wait. Whitebeard took a deep breath and said slowly. Let alone him, seeing the serious-looking warring states on the tower, he instantly lost the will to fight. Even the lineup of the opposing warring states and the three generals dare not act rashly, so what else can he do? He alone is still too weak to shake Liang in front of him. If you do it, the plan to save Ace will really miss the opportunity completely. In the battlefield. Puff, puff, puff. The corpses of the Navy and the pirates, after being beheaded, the blood was already sucked at the moment before they fell to the ground. The corpse withered and fell to the ground. All the corpses are withered and look tragic, making people unbearable to look directly at them. Lieutenant General Crane, Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel, Lieutenant General Ghost Spider, etc., involuntarily took a half step back. It was not that they were cowardly, but that they could not see where the enemy was. Such an enemy made them tremble with fear. Even Lieutenant General Crane didn't dare to face him. His face was serious. No matter how serious he was, he couldn't see the shadow of the enemy. How to fight such a battle? All the senior naval personnel, and even the captains of the Whitebeard pirates, all quietly evacuated from the battlefield in front of them without saying a word. Their faces were ugly and their hearts were under great pressure, but they did not dare to interfere. Everyone knows what a terrible monster the people who kill here are. Puff, puff, puff. Another crisp voice came out, and where the blade passed, countless lives were taken away. At the same time, the group formed by the Navy and pirates finally collapsed. They shouted loudly and wailed. Who is it? Is it the devil? Even the enemy can't see. It's over. We're completely over. No, I don't want to die. I can't even see the enemy. I don't even know who killed me. Okay, Zhao. It's like the god of death on the battlefield. He keeps harvesting people's lives. Wherever he goes, nothing grows. All the corpses become withered. Lieutenant General Crane moved his lips slightly, looked serious, and said in a low voice. Seeing the people in front of her continue to die, her mood is self-evident. Although the number of pirates is indeed decreasing, the number of people in their navy is also decreasing. This situation is fair to both sides. But this way of dying is still unacceptable to them. It's like seeing life as some ordinary garbage, killing it at will, without respecting life at all. But do we have a choice? Lieutenant General Crane shook his head helplessly, sighed, and said. No choice. In the face of such a terrifying enemy, they have no other choice but to passively serve as a target, and they have no choice to offer them. Chapter 393-Devil. The devil, this person, is Liang, and Liang has become a devil, constantly reaping our lives. It's Liang, it's definitely him. Is he enchanted? Or is he being controlled by the demon knife? Otherwise, why would he suddenly attack us? My god, Liang, he's actually enchanted. A group of Navy and pirates went crazy and shouted. They couldn't think of any other answer except Liang's enchantment. Otherwise, how can you explain why Liang acted on them? Obviously, Liang was afraid that he was really being controlled by the demon sword. This result is a fact that is even more terrifying in their hearts. A monster with terrifying strength was actually controlled by the demon knife. The slaughter brought about by this is simply unimaginable. what a terrible scene it will be. Puff, puff, puff. One after another withered corpses fell on the ice. The blood that had not yet flowed disappeared in an instant without a trace. A bright red shadow lingered constantly in the battlefield, nowhere to be found. And a group of Navy and pirates can only watch passively. The surrounding people are constantly being killed, and finally it is their turn. The moment they close their eyes a little, their heads are different. The scene is horrific. There are countless 743 corpses on the ground. The corpses are withered, and the dry corpses are unbearable to look at. With a thump sound, a group of pirates were instantly killed and fell to the ground. Before dying, all they could see in their eyes was a bright red blurry shadow, and then, there was a sharp slash that hit them and killed them on the spot. There were no serious injuries, there were just dead people. In Liang's hands, no one could survive for a second before facing death. After he died, the blood on his body was also swallowed up by the first-generation ghost in Liang's hands, and it instantly vanished and ceased to exist. It's terrible, he's the devil, he's the devil. A Navy cried out. A sharp slash instantly impacted, severing his head, throwing blood in the air, and in a blink of an eye, before he landed, he was sucked clean by the first-generation Gedo from his position in the air. Stripes of bright red rattan, at an alarming speed, continuously stripped the blood from people's bodies. The speed was so fast that people couldn't catch it with the naked eye. On the travel stage, Ace stared blankly at the scene in front of him, the terrifying images of his partners being killed. He clasped his hands tightly, his eyes were bloodshot, his teeth were gritted, and his expression was full of anger. However, even he could not see any trace of the existence of the enemy. All you can see is the 4 people who fell to the ground, that's all. Next to the tower, Warring State's face was serious, and his heart was under great pressure, especially when he saw the pictures of a Navy soldier being killed. As a marshal, his mood was indescribable. Whether it is him or the 3 generals, his mood is also very complicated. But they were also helpless. In the face of Liang's terrifying slaughter, they did not dare to act rashly, and they didn't even show the rescue they should have. Help me, I don't want to die. A part of the Navy collapsed, and they looked at the 3 generals on the high platform with hope and shouted. The sound is loud and clear, passing around. Visible. Their thirst for life is so intense. But does anyone dare to do it? Chapter 393-Devil. But does anyone dare to do it? The answer is negative. The high-level personnel of the Navy headquarters all knew who this enemy was, and they all knew that in this case, what they compared with Whitebeard was endurance. Which side takes the lead, means which side will lose without a doubt. Under the reign of Liang's terrifying power, whoever provokes Liang first will find his own way. Therefore, they did not dare to act rashly, and similarly, the Whitebeard on the opposite side did not dare to act rashly. Everyone invariably competes with each other for endurance. Who can endure the last, the higher the winning rate. Can't do it. The corner of Warring State's mouth moved slightly, and he said solemnly to the phone bug, no one can do anything. As long as those with the title of official BJBH quietly withdraw from the battlefield, we can do nothing. Yes, Marshal. The helpless voices from countless lieutenant generals seemed pale and powerless. Immediately, they tactfully withdrew from the battlefield in accordance with the instructions of the Warring States. And the group of navies left in the center of the battlefield means that they are a group of fat sheep that are about to be killed, and they are also chess pieces abandoned by their Navy headquarters. Lieutenant General Crane, Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel and others had mixed emotions in their eyes. They finally glanced at the Navy on the battlefield. They were speechless for a while, sighed silently, shook their heads and turned around, ready to leave. The point where the war has changed is not something they have the ability to reverse. Only waiting for Liang to stop the killing, or waiting for Whitebeard and others to take the lead and unable to resist, will this bring about another completely different change to the war. Otherwise, this kind of killing will continue as always. The image worms sent this picture to every island in the world. Countless people saw the killing on the big screen and their scalps went numb. This can be called a one-sided massacre. Moreover, they didn't even know who the killer was, so they couldn't see clearly, and could only capture a bright red blurry shadow. Yes, it's Liang. This monster has finally started. Some people, thinking of the layer of armor that Liang had covered just now, came to a conclusion. If you guess right, this person is definitely Liang. Seeing that Liang couldn't even capture the shadow of the murder, their hearts became heavier. The Navy and pirates are constantly dying. Now, nearly 10,000 people have died. My God, it's only been a while, so many people have been killed. The most terrifying thing is that the lieutenant generals, and Whitebeards actually watched such a tragic situation without moving at all. They are afraid. They are afraid of the devil, Liang. Quote. From the hearts of countless civilians, they have a deeper understanding of the name Liang, but it is a negative understanding. The mention of this name makes them terrified. This is a real devil. A murderous devil. That battle had not yet erupted into a fever, but under the promotion of Liang, it went into a fever, because there were too many subordinates who died. With Liang's slaughter, the war was directly eliminated from the prelude and entered directly into the middle and late stages. This kind of war will also be more cruel in their sight. But the most terrifying thing is Liang right now. In the silence, countless lives were wiped out, which is rare in the world. P.S. Recommend a good pirate book, Pirate Zerg Legion. Chapter 394 / I just got enchanted. Naval Headquarters, Marin Vando. On the ice cube in front of the square. The killing is still going on. At this time, Liang's footsteps did not stop, the killing continued, and he was also observing the level of blood stored by the first-generation Gishari. From the original 44-500. It has become open black lens bracket 476/50th_0 close black lens bracket. It's almost full. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and said slowly. After the deposit is full, it is time for him to withdraw. However, the killing must continue. The transformation of blood volume can no longer keep up with the speed at which he sucked the blood volume using the first-generation Gito. Therefore, this kind of situation will naturally occur when the continuous blood volume is stored. Puff, puff, puff. Holding the first generation of ghosts, he was covered with a layer of bright red armor and walked around the corners of the battlefield. Wherever you go, nothing grows. This is his terrifying power. All the navies and pirates are powerless and can only passively bear his slaughter. Killing you in a 1-to-1 ratio is also the main factor that will keep your war unchanged. I won't help anyone on either side, I just want you to speed up the war. Liang's eyes twinkled brightly, thinking so in his heart. Anyway, the war of these people will bring the death of a large number of people. If this is the case, it is better to let him do it directly. Wouldn't it be more convenient? The number of deaths on both sides of the Navy and the pirates, and the number of people who died in Liang's hands, were equal to each other, and they continued to spread in a 1-to-1 ratio. Therefore, there is no disadvantage to either side in the war. It will not bring advantages to either side because of Liang's actions. Therefore, although the people from the Navy headquarters and Whitebeard's side are under great pressure, they still won't do it easily. After all, the situation is not absolutely bad for them. Since both sides are losing manpower, what was the original situation, and what is the current situation, will not change in the slightest. There are still more than 100 people left, and we can stop. Then the question is, how can I give an excuse for my action? The corners of Liang's mouth twitched slightly, thinking so in his heart. If it is said that he just wanted to kill people, he did it. This reason is a bit inhumane. Moreover, in one move, nearly 10,000 people were killed. With such a terrifying number, wouldn't he have an anti-human title on his head? Although with his strength, he is indeed not afraid of such a title. But in general, if you can avoid it as much as possible, it is better to avoid it. He didn't want to be a rat crossing the street. In the future, even walking out of the street to have a meal would be revered by people, causing the scene of crowded streets, but it was really too troublesome. Really. If it is measured by strength, he believes that no one can compete with him. But daily life still has to continue, it's impossible, but wherever he goes, everyone shuns it. In this way, what is the interest in life? This damned devil, he must be enchanted. Let's run away, if we don't get out of here, we'll all be killed by this devil. It's unbelievable that Liang was also controlled by the demon sword. Who will stop him next? Or all of us going to die here? Quote. Many navies and pirates are boiling. Looking at the people who were dying around them, their mood also became very frightened. Facing the unknown enemy traces, it magnifies their fear infinitely. Even if the traces of the enemy cannot be captured, the result of this battle has already been decided. Chapter 394 I'm sorry, I've just been enchanted. Even if the traces of the enemy cannot be captured, the result of this battle has already been decided. It was a massacre against them. At the same time, Liang's footsteps slowed down a little, and after hearing the terrified voice of the crowd, he had a hint of an answer in his heart. Unexpectedly, these people are all good people. He couldn't think of a definite reason, but these people moved around to help him make up for it. If this is the case, then you can push the boat directly, and let these people think that he is truly infatuated. Therefore, they will be massacred. That's right. That's it. Liang moved faster, and after slaughtering all the last personnel, the blood volume stored in the first generation of ghosts finally ushered in a limit. Stored HP, open black lens bracket 500/500 close black lens bracket. This is the blood volume data of the first generation Kicheri. Okay, the slaughter is over. Liang stopped, and his figure gradually appeared in everyone's sight. In the position beside him, one after another withered corpses looked extremely dazzling. The bright red armor covered his entire body and was airtight, with no other parts except for a pair of eyes. The holy garment of blood, unlock it. Liang thought silently in his heart. Soon, the layer of bright red armor on his body gradually became introverted into the first generation of ghosts, and the bright red rattan around his arms gradually disappeared. The first generation of ghosts, once again turned into a bright red sword. Other than that, there is no other particularly obvious place. Silence. The navy and pirates who were planning to flee all stopped their steps and looked at Liang, who suddenly stood in the center of the corpse with fear on their faces. They were afraid. Completely terrified of being killed. Under Liang's slaughter, even if they were well trained, climbed out of the dead, and had a firm will, it was still inevitable that they would have a mental breakdown. You, what do you want to do? A navy with a face full of fear asked in a trembling voice. Everyone looked at Liang, including the Warring States period, Whitebeard and others. Their eyes were firm, motionless, without any anger at all, but with heavy pressure. Including the image worms, they also watched where Liang was standing, and transmitted his figure to every corner and island of the world. This also made it clear to everyone that the devil just now was Liang himself. Facing everyone's gaze, Liang behaved quite calmly. His eyes flickered, and he grabbed the first-generation ghost in his right hand, and reprimanded, "Actually, you have controlled me, you are very courageous. From now on, if there is a next time, I will definitely destroy you." Blood of the first-generation Gisheri rolled his eyes. This can be brought to his own body, it's so innocent. But whoever let the other party be its master, immediately, it also did a full set of tricks. The entire bright red blade trembled, as if he was terrified of Liang's threat. It's not an example. Liang was expressionless, then looked at the other people's positions, and said with a hint of apology, "I'm sorry, I was enchanted just now. The evil nature of this demon sword is too strong, I can't control it for a while. However, Now I have firmly imprisoned him in the blade, and there will be no such thing as just now. You can rest assured. I will not participate in the next battle. Finished talking. Li Ang's footsteps moved, and the figure gradually disappeared in the central area of the battlefield, and also left from everyone's sight. Regardless, this group of navy and pirates who had been scared to death on the battlefield calmly withdrew from the battlefield. Chapter 395-Powerless. Silence. All the remaining navies and pirates have not recovered. Li Ang's words were explained so that they could accept it in their hearts, but they still couldn't recover in a short time. The devil that shrouded the battlefield just left. It always felt like something wasn't quite real. However, since the devils have already left, it means that the war is about to break out again. Present. Countless pirates picked up the blade that had been given up long ago. Their eyes were red, as if to vent their inner fears. They shouted loudly, "Kill, kill the navy, save Ace." At the same time, not far behind, the navy, armed with guns, launched an attack. Boom, boom, boom. There were bursts of crisp and pleasant sounds, the sound of bullets entering the human body, the collision of knives and knives, etc., which can be seen on the battlefield. The war, once again, returned to its former state. And everyone seems to have subconsciously ignored the fear that shrouded their hearts just now. Step on high. Sengoku's eyes flickered, and he fell into deep thought. Enchanted. Impossible. He can be sure that Li Ang's normal eyes just now were definitely not the performance of the demon. That is to say, the other party is just using this as a reason to cover up some of the most real purposes in his heart. Thinking of this, he exhaled heavily, his eyes bright. 457. Even if you can come up with the answer yourself, so what? Li Ang doesn't need to be too similar, he just needs to say it, it's enough. This is just showing a position, that is, he will not participate in the next battle. That's all. If the warring states period persisted, Li Ang would not mind if he wanted to come and continue to massacre the navy. At this moment, warring states seemed to have aged 10 years in his heart. In the face of Li Ang, the Navy headquarters had too much scruples and was completely unable to use his fists. However, even if they really want to collide with Li Ang, the final result is very likely that their entire navy will be wiped out. Especially with the attitude of Li Ang just now, it made him shudder a little. Li Ang like that, standing on the top strength of the world. Not to mention him alone, even if he unites with all the mainstay forces at the top of the Navy headquarters to shake Li Ang, he still seems pale and powerless. So, I have a result in my heart, but I can't say it. If I say it, it will cause big trouble. For the first time, Sengoku felt particularly tired, sighed silently, and returned his attention to the battle in the center of the battlefield. Not just the warring states. Anyone with a little heart can be willing to say how pale Li Ang's words just now were. It's just that no one came forward to correct me. There is no reason for him, Li Ang's strength is too strong. So powerful that no one dares to accuse each other in person. In this way, it doesn't matter what the murder was for. No matter what it is, in short, there is nothing they can do about it. If you tangle too much, you will only make yourself sad. 3 seats. The 3 generals were expressionless and silent. Li Ang's obvious reason to fool the children, how could the 3 of them believe? But, believe it or not, is it useful? This is completely pointless. Strength. Aokiji raised his head, looked at the blue sky, and said with a little emotion. If the strength is sufficient, Li Ang can be attacked completely. Chapter 395-Powerless. If the strength is sufficient, Li Ang can be attacked completely. It's a pity that he is still not strong enough to dare to confront Li Ang head-on. The other side. On the deck of the Moby Dick. Whitebeard's face was gloomy, he took a deep breath and calmed down. That kid. He recalled Li Ang's explanation just now, and there was a surge of anger in his heart. Dad, don't be impulsive. Don't forget, Our goal this time is not to confront monsters like Liang. Our goal has never changed from beginning to end. Marco's face was heavy, and he quickly reminded. Suddenly, Whitebeard suppressed the thought that he wanted to fight Liang. Fighting against Liang, the price is too heavy. Moreover, he has no absolute certainty that he can defeat Liang. If he has not seen Liang's blood holy outfit, he is 20% sure about himself BJFG. So now, he still has so much confidence left. Because of Liang's speed, even he can't see through it. If you can't even catch the opponent's shadow, how can you fight? The rest can only passively endure the opponent's attack. And he is already old. If he takes a blow from Liang head-on, even if he doesn't die, he is afraid that he will be half-crippled. Kill. In the center of the battlefield, the confrontation between the Navy and the pirates has not subsided. They all seem to want to fully vent the emotions dominated by Liang's fear just now. Killing's eyes were all red, and their expressions were full of determination. Chihuahai re-entered the battlefield, and after sensing Liang's actions, they quickly withdrew from the battlefield in unison. They didn't think they could block Liang, who was in that state just now. Mr. Liang, you are still as strong as ever. Brother Doflamingo's eyes twinkled brightly, and he said with a smile. Seeing Liang's terrifying strength, the confidence in his heart was even stronger. Next, in the waters of the New World, he spreads his business, and it will also spread over a wider area. Today's battle will surely sweep the entire sea. The name of Liang will once again make countless people in the sea tremble. With Liang as a backer, Doflamingo will not be afraid of anyone. Even the four emperors, even Kaido, a monster, he would not think that the other party would dare to touch him. Not to mention that he also has decent strength. With Liang standing behind him, he can effectively deter many four emperors. His strength is stronger again. Hawkeye's face was heavy and the pressure was enormous. He chased after Liang, and once again felt the terrifying gap between the two, which could not be filled. It seems like a distance of 108,000 miles. And while he is working hard, he can only improve by 1 meter a day. If he wants to reach Liang's distance, I am afraid that he will not be able to do it in his entire life. It's just a distant dream. Dreams are always divorced from reality. Hawkeye never imagined that one day, he would be hit so badly by someone. He would never think that the gap between him and Liang could be made up by hard work. Effort can only shorten the distance between the two. Although the distance is very long, hard work can always chase the footsteps of each other. As for surpassing each other, this dream, Hawkeye can only put it in the deepest part of his heart, and completely seal it away. Lord Liang. Hancock's beautiful eyes flickered, and he whispered. Seeing Liang's appearance on the battlefield, she felt very proud. This is my man. Thinking of this, her pretty face blushed slightly, and her beautiful eyes fell into reverie. When will Master Liang marry someone? So excited. Really been waiting. Chapter 396-Little Laws. Not far from the battlefield. On the branch. Liang returned to his position, holding the hilt of the first-generation Goosh in both hands, his eyes twinkling brightly. The blood volume is already very abundant. It's just that the vitality passed from the first generation of ghosts is not as fast as imagined. Perhaps, this is what needs to be accumulated over time. It is impossible to eat a big fat man in one bite. He thought so, and put the first generation of ghosts in the scabbard. Immediately, put your eyes back on the battlefield area. At the same time, he could clearly feel that the gazes of people like Warring States and Whitebeard seemed to be looking at his position, which made him only wave his hand, expressing his helplessness. See. Almost spit out a mouthful of pus and blood from Whitebeard. It was obvious that he wanted to kill himself, but he pretended not to know anything. There are such shameless people in this world. On the other side, Sengoku's face is not very good looking, but since it is certain that Liang will not do it again, then he can carry out the next plan. Fortunately, the plan was not disrupted. Although a large part of the Navy died, a large part of the pirates also died. The number of people on both sides died a lot, and the losses to both sides were huge, but under the same loss, they could be offset. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud noise. The sky seemed to darken. In the battlefield, everyone stared blankly and raised their heads, looking at the position in the sky. An incomparably huge figure gradually emerged from the head, from the outer area of Marin Fando, step by step towards the battlefield ahead. What is this? A group of Navy was stunned, dumbfounded, and there was a trace of fear in their hearts. Giant clan, how could they grow to such a degree? My God, he turned out to be from Whitebeard's side. If we come here like this, wouldn't we be easily crushed into meat sauce? The Navy has heard the voices of discussion, and the expression is a little flustered. Seeing the sudden appearance of a terrifying figure, their movements stopped abruptly. On the Moby Dick, Whitebeard raised his brows and said, "Little Oz, don't be too impulsive." "Dad, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to save Ace, I'm going to save Ace." A huge giant, showing his face, he has reddish-brown hair, 2 objects similar to horns on the top of his head, 2 fangs on his chin are exposed, his body is huge, and he carries a huge arm around his waist. Knife. Giants, the distant descendants of the Devil Oz, Little Oz. In terms of size, he is several times that of an ordinary giant. At this time, Little Oz looked impatient, looked at Ace on the execution platform, and shouted loudly, "Ace, wait for me, I'll come to save you." The voice was loud, resounding through the sky. Whitebeard was expressionless and said to Marco beside him, "Take care of him." "Don't worry, Dad." Marco nodded, flame wings appeared behind him, and he turned into a phoenix and disappeared on the Moby Dick. On the execution stand, Ace looked at the figure of Little Oz with a bit of moving expression on his face, and said to himself, "Little Oz." Throughout the battlefield, the pirates brought huge changes. Seeing the appearance of Little Oz, the pirates boiled. "It's Little Oz, and Little Oz is here too. Brothers, help Oz open the way. Kill these goddamn navies. Captain Oz, we have paved the way for you, just go ahead, no matter what, we will clear the obstacles ahead for you. Quickly, go and rescue Captain Ace." A group of pirates were excited, armed with weapons, and frantically launched a counter-kill against the Navy. Little Oz stepped out, and the ground shook. Boom. Chapter 396-Little Oz. Boom. Countless navies on the ground were trampled into meat sauce. Others were shaken several meters away, rubbed the ground, and looked terrified. This body type is simply too far apart. The Navy spoke at the same time and lost his voice. After seeing the figure of Little Oz, the lieutenant generals belonging to the giant clan also dispatched one after another. "Want to save Ace? You have to pass our level first." The 2 lieutenant generals of the giant clan stopped in front of Little Oz and shouted loudly. It's just that, in the eyes of ordinary people, they are unattainable, but in front of Little Oz, they seem like children. The 2 are not the same weight at all. Lieutenant General of the Giants is dispatched. "Everyone, let's rush. There is a giant clan lieutenant general who can definitely stop this guy. We don't need to worry. We just move forward and kill the enemy ahead. Go, kill the pirates." The Navy is also boiling, and seeing the Giants' lieutenant generals take action, they naturally don't need to have too many scruples. "Get out of the way for me." Little Oz shouted with a face full of anger. "Stop for me." The 2 lieutenant generals of the giant clan were expressionless, and slammed into the front of Little Oz, using the terrifying power of the giant clan with both hands to try to shake Little Oz. Boom. A loud bang. A terrifying airflow swept in, sending the surrounding Navy and pirates flying. "I see." Little Oz spread out his hands and easily blocked the attack of the 2 giant lieutenants. "How is it possible?" The two lieutenant generals, one male and one female, were horrified and lost their voices. In an instant. Get out of the way. Little Oz burst out with astonishing power, directly knocking the two lieutenant generals of the giant clan in front of him more than 10 meters away. 0. Boom. The two lieutenant generals of the giant clan rubbed more than 10 meters on the ground before gradually stopping. Ah! A group of navy was crushed by the vice admiral of the giant clan, and died on the spot with howls of pain. Boom, boom, boom. Little Oz walked around, looking at Ace on the execution platform, his face full of excitement, and shouting, "Ace, I'm here to save you." Not far apart. On the branch. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the size of Little Oz. If it wasn't for the first generation of Goosh who had stored enough blood, he felt that just such a person would be able to fill the blood in the first generation of Goosh. But now, since the blood has been stored to the maximum capacity, I don't have to do it anymore. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he muttered to himself in a low voice. Seeing the Little Oz of the giant clan, an idea also appeared in his heart. How terrifying would it be if the giants were armed with arrogance? Unfortunately, the Little Oz in front of him doesn't seem to be armed with domineering, otherwise, his strength can definitely be multiplied dozens of times. In the field of fighting, the giants are born with fighting talent. The huge body endows them with terrifying power, and even the speed is much faster than ordinary people. This is a natural advantage. But the giant clan, who would not be armed with domineering, still looked very weak. If the body has no way to defend, any part will become the weakest position. Huge size, but also huge target. There is no certain defense power, and it is just a huge human-shaped target. Chapter 397_Chihuahai dispatched. What an abundance of blood this is. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the figure of Little Oz. There was always an impulse in his heart. I can't wait to kill the other party and deprive the other party of the feeling of blood. At the same time, in the battlefield ahead, Little Oz took a huge foot, slammed it down, and raised a burst of dust. Boom! With a loud bang, a group of Marines shouted loudly. Ah! Countless wailing sounds echoed around. Under 1 foot, there are countless dead navies. Others, even more cruel, were trampled on. Half of the body, and half of the body was left, blood flowing, and all the internal organs in the body spurted out. Kill. The expressions of several lieutenant generals changed slightly and took the initiative to approach Little Oz. But soon, in the surrounding positions, many captains of the Whitebeard pirates, 420, also approached and stopped these lieutenant generals. Don't want to be near Little Oz. A captain with guns in both hands, expressionless, said coldly. Kill. Several lieutenant generals looked at each other and shouted loudly. The battle is imminent. Boom, boom, boom. Little Oz took a huge step and walked in the direction of Ace. In the navy crowd, countless navies were terrified. Who will stop him? They looked around, as if no one could stop them. Gia 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 Gia. A sharp laughter came out, and the huge body of the Moonlight Moria dragged forward, with a strong interest on his face, saying, "What a perfect corpse." Although, after Liang's teaching, his enthusiasm for corpses is not as hot as before. However, seeing such a perfect corpse, he still had a lot of interest in his heart. What, are you interested? Doflamingo's eyes flashed and he laughed softly. No no no, it's better to leave it for you. Moonlight Moria waved his hand, retracted his gaze, and said directly. Then I'll be more respectful than obedient. Doflamingo moved, wearing a pink feather costume, and walked to Little Oz's place. His action immediately caused a group of navy to cheer loudly. Shibukai, Doflamingo, he's about to do it. I can finally see the terrifying power of Chihuahai. The most ferocious member of the 7 Seas, Doflamingo. Quote. The navy looked at Doflamingo and couldn't help but talk. For the strength of Chihuahua, it is naturally recognized as tyrannical. In addition to the three generals, the personnel strength of the naval headquarters is the top of the Chihuahua. Since Doflamingo is about to shoot, they are naturally very confident. Even if it is a giant family, it is difficult to resist the terrifying power of Chihuahua. Quick, back. The Navy spoke in a low voice. They made way and gave Doflamingo a battlefield. Moreover, in order to prevent the death of Little Oz, he would accidentally injure friendly troops when he fell, and they had to withdraw from this area. That's amazing. Doflamingo raised his head, wore sunglasses, looked at Little Oz in front of him, grinned, his face was stress-free, with a bit of a sharp breath. His fingertips swayed, and lines of transparent color that could not be captured appeared in the air. His figure disappeared in a flash. Chapter 397-Chihuahua is dispatched. His figure disappeared in a flash. Suddenly, in front of Little Oz, appeared behind him. Puff. Blood spilled out. Silence. The Navy stared blankly at the picture in front of them, and also, the large gushing blood was thrown on the ground, almost dyeing the whole earth red. The smell of blood was extremely strong and wafted in the air. Ah! Little Oz shouted in pain. One of his thighs was directly broken by the thread, and clumps of blood spurted out from the gap in the thigh. The picture was especially bloody. Boom! With a loud bang, he suddenly fell to the position beside him. The ground shook, and countless navies fell to the ground. Looking at Little Oz, whose leg was cut off by Doflamingo so easily, his expression was sluggish. Is this the strength of Chihuahua? They had a deeper understanding of Chihuahua's strength. Even the two lieutenant generals of the giant clan could only be killed in seconds, but in front of Chihuahua, they couldn't support a single move, and their thighs were cut off. This picture made their hearts full of shock. What a pity. Moonlight Moria shook his head, sighed, and said. A good corpse was destroyed just like that. However, he didn't say much. Since he didn't plan to do it, Brother Doflamingo did it, and what kind of action he made is understandable. Ace. Little Oz supported the ground with both hands, trying to stand up with difficulty. He looked at Ace on the execution platform, and slowly stretched out his hands. He was close at hand, but could never get close. Oz. Ace's eyes widened, bloodshot, and shouted. Ace, I will save you, wait for me. Little Oz spoke with difficulty and said again. Go back. Ace's face was full of madness, and he cried out. Seeing that Little Oz was so badly wounded, his heart was cut like a knife. Ta-ta-ta. At this time, beside Doflamingo, a huge person appeared. Oh, you want to do it too. Doflamingo looked at the Bartholomew bear beside him, his eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice. Bartholomew ignored Doflamingo's intentions. With a blank face, he slowly took off the gloves on his hands, and pulled out a ball of soft bear's paw bubbles. Bear shock. He directly patted the soft bear's paw bubble to the position of Little Oz in front of him. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, his voice was flat, without any emotional fluctuations. The soft bear's paw bubbles gradually submerged into Little Oz's body. Boom! A violent impact rolled inside the body. Little Oz widened his eyes and shouted in pain, Ah! Captain Oz! A group of men with knives with hats on their heads looked at the state of Little Oz, their faces full of anxiety, and they lost their voices. 2.0 In an instant. Little Oz was severely injured by the Bartholomew bear, and he vomited blood, the corners of his mouth were covered with blood, and his vision became blurred. Oz. Ace's eyes widened, watching Little Oz gradually close his eyes, full of unwillingness, and said angrily. Ace. Little Oz's eyes became hazy, and even his words became a little weaker. Under the attack of both Doflamingo and Bartholomew, he was directly hit hard. This is what Liang said, without armed domineering, it is easy to become a huge target and the main reason for being attacked. Damn. Marco looked at the miserable condition of Little Oz, gritted his teeth, and cursed. In front of him, the golden ape wearing a golden shirt blocked him stubbornly, completely unable to interfere with the battlefield below. Both are standing in the air, and they are fighting. Chapter 398 _ The Power of Whitebeard. Kazuna. Marco's face was ugly, his figure disappeared, and he suddenly appeared beside Kizaru and kicked out. Boom. The well-prepared Kizaru used his armed arm to block Marco's attack. 8-foot mirror. The corner of Huang Yuan's mouth moved slightly, and the whole person turned into golden light and disappeared in front of Marco, and appeared behind the other side, kicking down. A mass of faint fire flickered, and Marco turned into a phoenix, calmly looking at Kiwi, motionless, without the slightest injury. Such an ability is really annoying. Huang Yuan waved his hand and said nonchalantly. In fact, there are only a handful of people who can truly gain his discernment. And Marco is not in this range. The other side. After all, Little Oz gradually closed his eyes and fell to the ground, motionless. Captain Oz launched an attack on Doflamingo and Bartholomew 19. However, their strength is always limited. How could they shake the Chihuahua and were quickly killed to pieces? The war is still at a stalemate. What happened to Liang just now seemed to be forgotten by everyone. Only the high-level personnel, when fighting, Yu Guang will always unconsciously look at Liang's position, and be vigilant in his heart. Any change in the war is far inferior to the movement of a person. Liang can represent the most terrifying change in the entire war. Kill. The Navy and pirates are in a frantic exchange of fire. A Navy armed with a large knife rushed directly into the crowd of pirates. Puff. With one slash, the pirates' lives were taken away. Finally, he rushed to the front of the Moby Dick and laughed wildly, "Pirates, kill me." The sun shines down. A huge impact, mapped on the ice. The Navy was stunned, looking at the shadow that covered him, turned around in a daze, and raised his head. Unconsciously, he actually walked in front of the Moby Dick. And the man standing on the deck, of course, is Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. Whitebeard. The Navy's legs were weak, and he slumped directly on the ground, his expression full of fear. The shadow of the famous Tree of People, the Whitebeard has crossed the sea for many years, and in the naval headquarters, it also has a very terrifying majesty. Countless navies, facing such a terrifying existence at such a close distance, are naturally very frightened in their hearts, and it is difficult to hide them. At this time, Whitebeard looked down, with no emotion in his eyes, quietly looking at the Navy below. Watching helplessly, Little Oz was killed directly, and a burst of anger appeared in his heart, and his face gradually became gloomy and cold. Whitebeard, go to hell. Suddenly, the Navy grabbed the big knife in both hands, jumped up, and rushed towards Whitebeard's position. His eyes gradually enlarged, and his smile became more and more bright as he looked at the person who was about to approach the Whitebeard. Your head is mine. Empty shock. Whitebeard's face was expressionless. He glanced at the Navy from the corner of his eye, clenched his right fist, and struck with a punch. Click. The atmosphere cracked. A terrifying shock force swept in and enveloped the entire Navy. Boom. A loud bang. Chapter 398 _ The Power of Whitebeard. A loud bang. The Navy's whole body was split open by the shock, a blood hole appeared in his chest, his eyes widened, and he flew towards the battlefield dozens of meters away. Simply, can't die anymore. Countless people were shocked, and the Navy looked at the location of the Moby Dick, a burly figure with obvious muscle lines on his body. Whitebeard. There was a trace of fear in the hearts of countless Navy. Kill. On the other hand, the pirates were murderous and shouted loudly. Puff, puff, puff. Blood splattered, staining the ground red. The stumps are all over the place. The scene was extremely bloody and terrifying. The corpses of the Navy and pirates piled up into mountains and blood flowed into rivers. Whitebeard. Warring States stood on the high platform. His eyes were a bit dignified, looking in the direction of the Whitebeard, and said solemnly. The other party has already started. It means that the real war must go directly to the world stage. Image worms transmit everything here to all corners of the world. At the same time, together with the staff of countless newspapers and magazines, they print these messages into paper and transmit them to any area of the sea. Even if the news is not well informed, you can know the process and progress of this war. Finally done. Whitebeard. Aokiji and Akainu gradually stood up, looking at the Whitebeard in front of them, their eyes twinkling. The high level is in combat power and is about to be dispatched. At this time, on the deck of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard's face was gloomy, and he stared ahead, especially after seeing the fallen figure of Little Oz. His mood became more and more uncomfortable. Die, Whitebeard. A lieutenant general of the giant clan suddenly appeared in front of Whitebeard, holding a large axe in both hands, and slashed it down violently. He seemed to have seen the scene where Whitebeard died under his knife. I'm about to kill Whitebeard. I can become a hero in the Navy, and it's not impossible that I can jump from a mid-level admiral to a general. Whitebeard, die for me. The eyes of the lieutenant general of the giant clan flickered, and the waves in his heart were tumbling. He held the big axe in both hands, swung it violently, and chopped it down. Whitebeard's face was expressionless, and a white halo appeared on 007's right hand, smashing it to the side. Click. The atmosphere cracked. The big axe was blocked, and in this shocking force, every inch was cracked. Crunch. The entire big axe instantly turned into pieces and fell to the ground. The giant's lieutenant general's eyes widened, his expression full of horror and deep panic. Escape. It was the only thought left in his mind. But Whitebeard's speed was even faster. His right hand grabbed the helmeted head of the lieutenant general of the giant clan. His face was expressionless, and the palm of his hand burst out with a shocking ability. Puff. The entire helmet of the lieutenant general of the giant clan was shattered. He vomited blood, his hair was disheveled, the blood spread all over his head, and he instantly lost consciousness. Immediately, Whitebeard lifted the giant lieutenant general and threw it aside, his expression unchanged, as if he was doing a trivial thing that could not cause waves in his heart. Immediately after, he looked forward, his eyes fixed on the direction of Ace on the execution platform, and then moved to Sengoku's face. His eyes were a little bright. Whitebeard, you bastard. Sengoku's face was gloomy, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he said in a low voice. Dad. Countless pirates shouted loudly, watching Whitebeard casually kill a lieutenant general. This scene really made them morale and excited. Chapter 399_Conversation on the execution stand. The war is heating up. Whitebeard's action aroused the enthusiasm of the pirates in the audience. The fighting became more and more fierce. The pirates were excited, armed with weapons, and killed the navy in front of them. The scene was extremely spectacular. And on the execution stand, Ace knelt down, lowered his head, and watched a group of pirates in front of him die for him. His expression became unnatural. These people died because of his impulsiveness. I am a sinner. His lips moved slightly, and he whispered, his eyes moistened unconsciously. Seeing a group of pirates fighting the navy and being killed in order to save him made him very worried. If I hadn't been so impulsive in the first place, then none of this would have happened. It's just that there is no regret medicine in this world. Because of his impulse alone, the war caused too many casualties. These people, many of whom are older than him, also call him the captain on weekdays and treat him with respect. But he is very clear that these people know more things than him. In addition to strength, other aspects are taking care of him, like taking care of the younger generation. It's my own fault. Why do you want to save me? Ace clasped his hands tightly, roaring in his heart, his eyes reddened. At this time, ta-ta-ta. The sound of heavy footsteps came gradually. Well. Sengoku raised his brows, looked at the figure gradually ascending the execution platform, and asked, Cap, what are you going to do? If I wanted to make a move, I would have done it already. Carp's face was gloomy, he lowered his head, and walked to the execution platform step by step, his face a little old. I just want to talk to him, that's all. Warring States was silent for a while, but did not speak. Immediately, he turned his head and looked at the battlefield ahead. Ta-ta-ta. The footsteps were getting closer. Garp sat down next to Ace, and watched the tragic state of the battlefield with Ace. His eyes were a little lost, and he said slowly, if you listened to me and became a Navy, it would be good. Now. Father. Ace moved his lips slightly, looked at Garp beside him, and whispered to himself. In the sun. Lighting it on Garp's profile, Ace could clearly see that the strong man of the year was still old after all, and the old wrinkles became more and more obvious on the other's face. Whether it's you or Luffy, why don't you listen to me? Don't do what I say. Instead of choosing to go out to sea and be a pirate. Garp clenched his fists with both hands, but let them go helplessly. He was wise all his life, went through fire and water for the Navy, and created countless records of naval feats. However, in the way of teaching people, countless mistakes have occurred. The two people he taught not only did not become the Navy, but they both went out to sea and confronted the Navy as pirates. He should have always thought that this day would come. It's just that he didn't think about it before. What should he do when this scene really occurs? As a hero of the Navy, will your grandson brought up with your own hands beheaded on the spot? Or, for the sake of grandson, convicted rebels? Any possibility made him feel extremely entangled in his heart. Chapter 399 _ The conversation on the execution platform. Any possibility made him feel extremely entangled in his heart. In this case, he can only keep silent, and neither side will help. Only in this way can he make his heart feel a little better. Why, you didn't do as I said in the first place. Garp closed his eyes slightly, looked extremely struggling, and shouted. Looking at Garp's old face, Ace fell silent, not making a sound. The old man is too late, no longer the same as he used to be. At the same time, they no longer have the ability to govern them. All the training they had in the past was still vivid in his mind, which made Ace's eyes a little hazy, his vision became blurred, and he clenched his teeth and did not show it. I told you long ago that when you grow up, you will be an excellent Navy. It's just that you didn't listen to it. Like Luffy, you went out to sea and became a pirate. Maybe this is fate. I can't change this result. Garp was entangled in his heart, his expression struggled, and he said slowly. As a naval hero, he looks strong, but at this moment, he also shows a weak side. Seeing that his family was about to be executed, how could his mood improve? However, there is nothing he can do. His beliefs and his family are on two levels. Whichever direction he chooses, he will feel pain in his heart. Just stand in the middle and don't touch either side. But in this way, in the end, he will also lose his family. Even Garp's eyes became cloudy, and a layer of water mist covered his eyes. No matter how strong people are, there is a weak side. It's just that, on weekdays, it doesn't show up. Old man. Ace opened his mouth, saw Garp's expression, and lowered his head. He admitted that in this life, he owed no one, and never owed anyone. Only Garp is the one he owes the most. Raised him and trained him to be very tenacious. Although the training method was cruel, they still cultivated a monster-like survivability. Although, Cap usually likes to bully them and force them the idea of the Navy. But, it's also because of Garp's meticulous love for them. I owe too much. Like Luffy, he spent a lot of effort on Garp, and it was the most difficult thing for Garp. Unfortunately, they, after all, disappointed the old man Garp. Instead of doing what Garp said, they chose to become a pirate, which ran counter to Garp's philosophy and went the opposite way. Maybe, the old man's heart has been aching for a long time, but he chose to hide his emotions, and seeing his grandson safe and sound is the greatest joy. No matter whether it is pirates or Navy, Garp hopes that the two of them can live well, it's as simple as that, it's enough. It's just that God is not so good. Ace is now kneeling on the execution platform, which is the most heart-wrenching result for Garp. There is also a deep struggle between saving and not saving. If Ace followed his words and became an excellent Navy, these things would not have happened. Thinking of this, Garp could only sigh silently in his heart, looking down. Aside. The afterglow of the sun shone on Garp's profile, and Ace couldn't help but feel a sadness in his heart when he saw the white temples beside Garp's ear. The other party raised him personally, but in the end, he witnessed his departure with his own eyes. The white-haired person sends the black-haired person. Even if Garp's heart is like iron, he will feel heartache and tears. In this life, he owes Garp too many things. Chapter 400-Shocking Secret. Kill. In the battlefield, countless pirates and navies collided with each other. A terrifying battle ensued. The lieutenant generals and captains were dispatched one after another, bringing a surging fierce battle, which was in full swing and in full swing. The corpses lay all over the ground, and the blood flowed into rivers. The bright red blood was extremely dazzling in the sunlight. In the air, a strong bloody smell was very pungent. Ace, wait, we're here to save you. The captain of the 3rd Division, Diamond Yoja, shouted. Call out. A sharp slash slammed into his face, and I don't know when, Hawkeye appeared in front of him, holding the Black Knife Knight, expressionless, and said lightly, come again. Good. Diamond Yoja's eyes became solemn and he shouted loudly. He took the initiative to attack, turned his whole body into diamonds, and fought tenaciously with Hawkeye. Although he seemed a little reluctant to deal with Hawkeye, on the whole, he was able to block Hawkeye's offensive. Hawkeye was at ease and did not kill, so he regarded the Diamond Yoja in front of him as the target of sparring. Otherwise, if he shot with all his strength, Diamond Yoja would never last a minute. Boom, boom, boom. When the two collided, there was a burst of crisp sound, and the fire was shining. On the sky, Marco and Kizaru fought quite fiercely. Immortal Bird 827 allowed Marco to effectively block all the attacks of Kizaru, and the two could only use their armed colors to confront each other. Don't you look down at your buddies. They have a hard time dealing with them. Kizaru's eyes flickered, trying to divert Marco's attention. I have great confidence in their strength. Marco sneered and said lightly. Immediately, he quickly rushed towards Kizaru and kicked it down. Boom. Kizaru's face changed slightly, and he blocked it with his hands, but his position in the air was still swept by the terrifying impact. Suddenly, he was kicked from the sky by this kick. But when he was about to reach the ground, his whole body turned into a golden light. In an instant, appearing behind Marco, he said lightly, could it be, do you think I'll be knocked down by you so easily? Of course not. Marco was expressionless, his eyes turned, and he noticed the kiwi behind him, and his whole body flickered with flames. Boom. Kizaru used his armed color and also kicked down. Marco resisted with all his strength and opened a distance from Kizaru in the air. The two look at each other, and in a short time, BJBC, it is impossible to tell a winner. The other side. Because Little Oz's blood flowed down and penetrated into the ground, the original organs of the Navy had been effectively destroyed, which made the Navy miss part of the trump card for no reason. White Fist. Smog used the smoking fruit to turn his whole body into a cloud of smoke and drifted across the battlefield. He punched out, hitting the floor. Boom. A big pit was smashed into the ground, and all the pirates around were shaken. Ah! The pirates shouted one after another, and their expressions were particularly painful. In this kind of battle, as a natural ability person, the power that can burst out is quite impressive. Not many people understand the arrogance of armed color, and naturally they can't block the tricks of the natural devil fruit. Chapter 400-Shocking Secret. Not many people understand the arrogance of armed color, and naturally they can't block the tricks of the natural devil fruit. Those with natural abilities are immune to all physical attacks. This is equivalent to melee combat. If there is no sea tower stone or armed domineering, ordinary people can't help any natural ability person. Among them, Smoker, who was at the bottom of the natural system, was included. In large-scale wars, the power brought by the ability of the natural system is definitely much better than the devil fruit of other departments. White Hunter, Smoker. A pirate lost his voice with a bit of solemnity in his eyes. He drew 2 pistols from his pocket and attacked Smoker. Boom, boom, boom. The bullet cut through the air and arrived in front of Smoker in an instant. Kalu Stone Bullet. Smoker's eyes flickered, and he quickly used the weapon in his hand to effectively open the bullet. Kalu Stone Bullets, for him, are still not small. If he is hit on a key part of his body, I am afraid that even he will be severely injured. Damn, it was avoided. The pirate gritted his teeth and cursed. However, Smog quickly appeared behind the pirate and used the weapon of Hailushi to stab him. Boom. The pirate was instantly knocked away more than 10 meters away and was unconscious. Next, Smog turned his eyes to other locations and quickly joined the battlefield. The overall strength of the Navy headquarters is much stronger than that of Whitebeard. Therefore, it can be seen that after stabilizing the situation, the naval headquarters has launched a suppressive offensive. Among the pirates, except for those captains and the captains of the pirate group under their command, the rest of the pirates are ordinary pirates who can only deal with some ordinary naval soldiers. On the Navy side, there are still lieutenant colonels, major generals, etc., and in terms of quality, they can completely suppress the members of the Whitebeard pirates. Intense fierce battles broke out on the entire battlefield. There were more and more corpses on the ground, and more blood was flowing. The corpses of pirates and navy were piled up into mountains. It is not clear who is the pirate and who is the navy. The corpse was stained with a layer of bright red blood, and even the clothes were infected with half the sky. Kill. The 2 sides collided, resulting in heavy casualties. On the tower, Warring States narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the battlefield in front, and then looking at Whitebeard. Lang Lang shouted, "Whitebeard, you have hidden secrets for so many years, and today, the truth will be revealed." Well. Whitebeard stared blankly at the Warring States period. From the eyes of the Warring States period, he saw something bad. Immediately. In the face of many image bugs, the Warring States took a deep breath and prepared to sort out the secrets that had been thoroughly sorted out. This secret can definitely trigger the boiling of the sea. However, today, with the appearance of this secret, coupled with the capability of the Navy headquarters, it has effectively attacked the arrogance of the pirates. Because of Li Ang's appearance, Warring States almost forgot about it, but now, he finally remembered it. This important matter must be fully revealed before Ace is executed. He wants everyone in the whole world to know Ace's true identity, and for all pirates to see clearly. Pirates, there is no good end. People from different islands, please listen to me clearly. Everything I say next will become news that shakes the world. The corners of the Warring States' mouth moved slightly, facing the image bug, and shouted loudly. His voice echoed loudly around. There were signs of a stop in the entire battlefield, and they all looked at the Warring States standing on the high platform. The Navy and pirates have the same line of sight.